All right, welcome into another edition of the Illegal Contact Podcast. Thomas, Jared, Peyton, guys, we had 5 last week. We're down to 3, dropping like flies. How you guys doing?
We're hanging in there, trying to.
We're alive.
It was a very good weekend for myself. So
I know Jared and I couldn't miss this podcast or anything. We had a big Jets win, Clemson won, obviously for you, Jared. You had to show up. Peyton, you had a bye week in college football.
Didn't lose.
So you didn't lose. You got a big week coming up to talk about, and
Didn't lose. Still moved up in the rankings.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
and you might have to drop early, so you might not want to talk some NFL later. So it's good stuff. And Kyle went to the Michigan State game. Unfortunately, again, we know he was frustrated. Probably why he is sick now and cannot make it. And Christian has softball again, so of course it's just the 3 of us, but we have plenty to talk about, and we're going to talk about Yeah.
That was probably the most important thing, Thomas. UConn won a football game.
UConn. Hey! I have
since 2019.
First FBS win. The Jim Mora era.
Man, it's all uphill from here.
If I told you that we were going to lead a show with UConn football winning a game last year, you would have quit the podcast.
I think we were in the early 2000s.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, it would have been that what was it, 2007, 2008, the Oklahoma Bowl game? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. The little Dan Orlowski. No, he wasn't on that team, but let's go into our fan perspectives here. Peyton, we'll start with you. Obviously, there isn't much to go here since you had a bye week, and we're going to get into the game upcoming against LSU later in our picks, and kind of you can preview it there, but is there anything you wanted to add here? Obviously, as a bye week, anything, rankings wise that kind of fluctuated around, anything you wanted to bring up with Tennessee football?
So I told you all last week, I was like, you know what? I'm a little annoyed that Kentucky is still above us in the rankings. Well, it sorted itself out because Kentucky did not look super fantastic this past week. But no, I typically don't like early season bye weeks, but for us, I think it was good, specifically with Cedric Tillman having his ankle injury, and he had that tightrope ankle surgery. So giving him some extra time to be able to potentially come back much sooner than had he had like a normal full-on surgery or even a worse injury. I am hoping that we don't play him this week at LSU. I think that's unlikely. Heupel did say that he started practicing this past week, doing just some walkthroughs, nothing intense, but he was with the team doing walkthroughs, which is encouraging. But if he's able to, being able to come back for the Alabama game, I think that'd be pretty good. But yeah, I'm excited we didn't lose this last weekend. I'm happy to see we still moved up in the rankings. As far as resume goes, we have the best resume so far in the top 10, potentially the whole top 25. I'd have to look further than that, but I think our resume looks fantastic. We got just top 25 games on the schedule, one right after another going forward. So I'm happy that LSU is ranked, just so we're
perfect timing, right?
Yeah, that kind of boosts, who we're playing. And LSU isn't bad. I know they had that beginning of the season with Florida State, and there's a lot of question marks around that.
And that loss doesn't look as bad now that we know Florida State was ranked last week, and doesn't look like a pretty bad team either anymore. So, as far as you mentioned the Kentucky game, and we can go into that eventually as well, because that's probably one of the big games of the week that I wanted to highlight. We picked it. We had some disagreement there. It was a pretty close game. And it had implications, obviously, like you said, as far as the rankings and Tennessee being behind them at that point. And now, like you said, works itself out. Usually does sometimes like that. As far as maybe some Liberty football, just to bring it, since we don't have Christian here, another good win, right? Another good win against ODU away favorites there, but it really wasn't a close game at all. In a way that Liberty kind of controlled that game. You didn't feel like they were had that out of touch at all. The interesting thing is that Salter was benched it seemed like their half. I don't know. Maybe we need Christian here as far as some context there. I didn't know if it was really an injury or just the second half they came out with Bennett. And he gave him a spark, and they ended up, pulling away and winning the game. And it really was the run attack and the defense there. But another good win against a really good team. Now they get kind of an off week, hopefully, against UMass. And Liberty's looking pretty good to
we hit top 10 too.
Yeah, that catch was incredible. One of the best catches you'll see, man. Golly day. If you haven't seen it yet, go look it up.
And you wouldn't know. You put it on mute, though, because you wouldn't know by the commentators that it was a top 10 catch.
My goodness. I don't know why they gave them that job.
I mean, even if it's the away commentary, and you don't expect it to be as good, right? And it's ODU football. You don't expect them to have an A+ commentary, but
at the same time, it's ODU football. You don't see those plays all the time.
Exactly.
You would expect to be surprised by.
And even if it's not your team, you're painting a picture there. That's part of the responsibility of calling a game. You need to call it with some respect.
You got to think, what if this is on the top 10? Like
this is my only chance.
Yeah, this is a way for me to get my name out there as an announcer.
Oh, well, they did. Just
you gotta always be ready.
Way.
Yeah, just not in the right way. But you look at like Sean McDonough. I mean, the biggest calls of his entire career, his voice is cracked. So even some of the best ones, it doesn't work out for you. But either way, great play.
Well, and you watch, that they've watched football for most of their lives. They know what's a great play and what is just a normal play. Like, that was an unreal catch,
and
it didn't move. Like, it was just like Peyton said, it just stuck to his hand. Those are the moments that you live for as an announcer. That was like your moment to actually show some emotion. But I remember, I think it was Emmanuel Acho. He was like, "Are they announcing a game or a funeral?" So yeah,
it was a funeral of ODU football, and now we know who the clear number one team in Virginia is, and it's the Liberty Flames. All right, Jared, a little bit of Clemson football here. Huge win. Huge. I mean, really, probably the best win to date of the year for them, right? 10-point win against a really tough NC State team. And they made it look pretty easy, even though it was only a 10-point win. What are your thoughts there and kind of how you evaluate Clemson football moving forward there?
Yeah, and the score doesn't really indicate, I feel, how the game went. I know they scored late. It was like 50 seconds left, and we had generated a turnover, but had a penalty on that drive that sustained the drive. It was a late hit, which was just a silly mistake, one that you can't have, and hopefully defender learns from it and doesn't do it again, because, again, that should have been a 17-point win, and it, style points, right? So overall, though, like you said, I certainly was very pleased. The run defense, man, that's really where Clemson has been so dominant. Number 2 in the country, only behind JMU at this point, allowing, I think it's 70 yards a game in rushing, something along those lines. It's very low. So, the defensive front definitely controlling the line of scrimmage. Looked a lot better on the back half because we had a lot of injuries in the Wake Forest game, and guys just stepped up. They played a lot better this week. So, overall, I feel like defensively we looked much better. Leary did not look comfortable at all the entire game. I feel like we definitely did a good job on him and the receivers. Now they did have a few tips that I feel like Leary made nice adjustments and throws, and the receivers just didn't make plays. So, credit to the scheme that Liberty had for NC State this week. I thought that defensively looked great. And then on offense, Shipley looked very good, as we expected. DJ also had a fantastic game, looked very good running the football as well.
Yeah, where'd that come from? Where has that been? Really? They were begging for that all last year.
Yeah, he finally decided to have a few design runs. I feel like Brandon Streeter has really grown even in the first couple of games of the season so far as an offensive coordinator. I think he's starting to get comfortable now calling the plays. There's still a few times where I'm a little confused as to what we're trying to do, but the scoreboard, we're generating points. So, and yardage and just offense in general. So can't question it too much, I guess. But overall, I was very, very pleased with how we looked against a quality opponent. I mean, it's NC State. A lot of pundits had them possibly knocking us off and going to the college football playoff, potentially running the table for the ACC. So for us to knock them off, I thought that was a quality win for us. Very pleased.
Yeah, I think that NC State's defense, I mean, they were pretty impressive, even giving up 30 points, especially to start the game. Like, they looked, I was kind of curious as to how it was going to end up working out for you guys, because I was like, man, they look legit right now. I mean, great pressure. They've got pretty good corner play as well. So I think they're going to be really tough for everybody else that they end up facing the rest of this year.
Yeah, and that's I think the reason why a lot of folks thought that they were going to be very good this year is because you already knew the offense, and that's the weird thing, is that the offense hasn't really stepped up to the level that the defense is playing. And I think the pundits felt like the defense was going to be able to match the offense, and so far the offense hasn't been able to match the defense, which they're a very veteran group. They mentioned that as well, that they have a lot of upperclassmen on that defense, which experience is super vital when it comes to having a good defense. So yeah, credit to NC State in the first half, especially. They look very good, most definitely, and they gave us a run for our money. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really was more of Clemson taking this game in the second half and winning it. It didn't seem like NC State really lost it. I know obviously they had the struggle on offense. Give credit to that defense. It's going to be a problem in the ACC, and they look like the second best team in that conference for sure. Don't see them falling off. It wasn't, this game wasn't an indictment on NC State not being as good as people thought. I think it really was Clemson stepping up to the occasion, showing the talent they have, especially on offense against a really tough defense. DJ really showed some steps there for moving forward, especially the offensive coordinator, like you mentioned. It just seemed, like you said, with NC State, it was Devin Leary and Devin Leary alone on offense. The offensive line kind of crumbled. Understandable against probably the best defensive line in college football, but they just really lacked playmakers. Nobody in the run game, none of their other than Thomas in the receiving core. Nobody really stepped up there, and that's something we've seen NC State have in the last few years, right? With Nyheim Hines in the backfield, with Jacoby Myers, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, real NFL talent at playmakers. And it doesn't seem like Jalen Samuels as well. So doesn't look like they have that talent this year. It's going to be Devin Leary and how far can he bring them on offense, but then that defense is really going to be solid. But credit to Clemson, really. They showed up in a big game there. And Jared, as far as, I guess, moving forward, we established this every week as far as record-wise. I think you mentioned 10-2, right, last week, as far as maybe a revision in record.
Yeah.
Do you still see that, or now do you maybe see 11-1 after getting through this, one of the tougher games here?
I'm just cautious because I'm still not 100% sold on DJ yet, even though he's looked so much better. But it's like a part of me is almost like, when's it going to happen? When's he going to have that bad game? And I'm just hoping that I'm wrong. But I just want to see it consistently. It's still a very small sample size to start the season. If he is consistent, though, I do feel like we can run the table and we can go undefeated all the way up to the college football playoff. And then from there, I mean, this season seems like it is wide open. So I don't know. As of right now, I'm going to stick with 10-2, just because, again, I'm not 100% sold yet. So just want to continue to see him growing each and every week, which he has. He definitely has. I mean, he's now in the Heisman odds makers, so he's cracked that now, which I figured that'd be a matter of time just because he's in the national spotlight. But again, hopefully that doesn't get to his head, and we'll see. So keep me at 10-2.
So with 10-2, and NC State obviously having a loss now, you see the ACC being left out of the playoffs, if that comes true.
So my second loss is coming at the playoffs. So, and I guess that would make us 11. That would be 11-2, I suppose.
Okay, so you regular season then you have one loss is what?
Yeah, regular season.
Okay,
I'm thinking we have
that's
one
a little
loss.
different. I think when we're factoring this in, we'll keep it regular season.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs, so you have a one-loss team, Clemson, hopefully getting into the playoffs then.
Yes.
Okay, because I would agree there. If it's 2 losses in the regular season, ACC gets left out of the playoffs.
Correct.
Especially now that NC State can't go undefeated, and I don't think any other team, obviously Wake Forest, Florida State, Miami, all the other teams, Pitt, they have a loss at least. So no more undefeated teams in the ACC, correct?
Correct. Which I was a little. Actually, I think Syracuse is undefeated still.
Oh, that's true. They did crack into the rankings this year. They are 5-0. They are are now ranked.
Clemson plays them this year, so I mean, I think they play them every year. So we're on the same side, so that could be an interesting game. I know Syracuse hasn't really played anyone of great talent as of yet, but you beat who's on your schedule, and right now they've done that. So I am interested to see how that game goes. After watching Wake Forest play Florida State this past week, I do feel a little bit better about playing against Florida State. And I feel like, Wake Forest, their offense is just very high powered. So for them to look as comfortable as they did against Florida State, and Florida State struggled against Wake Forest's defense. I feel like if they struggled against Wake Forest's defense, that will probably give Florida State fits. So I feel a little more confident about that game. I wanted to see how Wake Forest did against them before I made a judgment on that. So I feel a little bit better going into that one. But Syracuse is a wild card. I'm not sure what to think of them yet. Not until they actually play someone of high caliber talent. So we'll see.
All right, let's go into our Heisman draft again. We started this last week. Now that we've had a couple of weeks of sample size, hopefully you guys remember who you picked here. I know that I had C.J. Stroud. I'm not going to change anything. I still think he's the favorite at this point. Nothing changed thus far, so I'll stick with him. Peyton, you had Hendon Hooker, correct?
Yes.
Sticking with him. Obviously, no change as far as no game, so yeah, nothing changing there.
Okay. I will say my second pick of who I was considering was Penix, and I'm glad I did not because
he had a struggle week.
Yeah, he had a tough time.
Yeah, he did, especially because if they had won, they might have could have saved him there. But with them losing, I think that
they
definitely
tried to
hurts
come
him.
back. They tried
did.
To, yeah,
they did, and it was because of him too. He had a much better second half. First half, he was struggling because he's normally very careful with the football, and he had two picks in that game in the first half. So that was very surprising from him. So I fully agree with you on that.
And he's dropped out of the top 10 in odds now after that game. So
yeah,
it's fair. It reflects the performance. And Jared, do you remember who you had last week?
I had Penix. However, I'm going to change due to what we just stated.
Fair.
And you know what, Peyton? This is interesting. I'm going to go with Will Rogers. He actually is having a fantastic year for Mississippi State so far. He's leading the nation in touchdown passes with 19. And he's third in passing yards at 17-15. So he's looking really good. And he plays Arkansas this week, so another potential game for him to put up some good numbers. It's at Mississippi State, so yeah, I'm interested to see how he does throughout the rest of the year. I'm going to go with Will Rogers right now.
I'll be honest, I thought you were going to say Daniels from Kansas.
Yeah, I want to stay away from that still.
Because it's Kansas.
Well, and because their schedule, I feel like they're probably going to trip up at some point, and it may be for a few games, but I don't know. We'll see. He's looked very good again. I totally was with you last week. I'm a believer in him. I think he is a fantastic player. But unfortunately it's a team game. So, unless he's Lamar, the second coming of Lamar Jackson, but, yeah, he's certainly in the conversation, in my opinion. I'm fully on his bandwagon right now.
Yeah. The odds keep creeping up there. I have the most updated odds here. CJ Stroud is the favorite at +150. Second now is Caleb Williams after a better week. And third is now Bryce Young. So Caleb Williams jumps Bryce Young. Bryce Young now third at plus 900. Hendon Hooker in sole possession of fourth place here, plus 1,400. So those are pretty good odds there, Peyton.
I'm surprised that Bryce Young didn't drop a little bit more, just because of the uncertainty of an injury.
Well, and he's not going to be able to play, right? Like, I know that Saban said he's day-to-day, but you almost believe there's no way he plays this week, right?
I don't know. I mean, obviously every player wants to get out there and, they want to, put their time on there, but I don't know. I mean, they're playing Texas A&M, so it could be tough, but it is at home. So, I mean, do you at least let him suit up and have Milroe start? I think that would be if you're Alabama, that would be the safe thing to do. See how Milroe does. He looked good. Milroe was great rushing the ball too. So, I mean, if I were Saban, I would give Bryce Young time, because if you play him too early, you can ruin your playoff chances down the road. And
if this was maybe a top 10 matchup, like we made a lot of us expected before the season started, Texas A&M, Alabama, but they're unranked now. You probably only need to put up 21 points and that's it. I don't think Texas A&M is going to be able to score much in this game. The other interesting
2 weeks from now, I say he plays.
Yes. Yeah. The other interesting thing I just wanted to note here for Heisman is how Stetson Bennett is all the way up to fifth at plus 1,600. I don't see that. I don't get why anybody would put money on him. I don't get, the struggles that they've already had now, which we can bring up the struggles that Georgia had putting away Missouri. They didn't have the lead until really late in that game. I don't see it. I don't know how he's fifth in odds. I don't know why anybody would be wasting money on that. I don't see any scenario where he would be able to win the Heisman.
I feel like people are still hanging their hat on his performance that he had against Oregon. Like, he had a fantastic game against Oregon, and that's really been it. Other than that, he's just looked mediocre. Other than that, so I will say another name to look out for is Drake May for UNC. He's got 19 touchdowns to 1 interception this year. Like,
the schedule is one there. Like, you got to be able to win.
Exactly, and that's going to be his downfall. I think is the win column. Unless they string together a bunch of wins to end the season, but I mean those are ridiculous numbers, 19 to 1. So anyway, yeah, I mean he could be a potential one to look out for, and I think he's fourth in the country in yards. So yeah, that's another one to look out for at least.
Well, yeah, I'm bringing up Stetson Bennett, and he had the yardage against Missouri, over 300 yards, no touchdowns on the year. He has 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, 5 touchdowns. That's it. I mean, that's the epitome of a game manager at this point. 5 touchdowns. Exactly. The defense has been the story there. So I really don't understand that. But going to that game, do you guys have real concerns now with Georgia, especially in offense? Did that game tell you something about Georgia and how they couldn't put away an average Missouri team?
This is exactly why I said what I said the week before with the Kent State statement, because it didn't feel like a dominating win against Kent State, and Kent State is not a good team. I think it was 12-10 going into halftime, around there, something like that. It was only a 2-point game, and I'm like, what is going on here? How is Georgia not blowing this team out? So then when Missouri did what they did, and it's a consistent thing that's happening, it's like, okay, is Georgia playing down the competition? Are they not as good as we thought? I mean, obviously they blew out Oregon, but I don't know, that it definitely raises question marks, especially for, like you just said, Thomas, the offense. I mean, it's a defensive driven team, even though last year they lost a lot of talent on their defensive side of the ball to the NFL. Their defense is still very good this year. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the offense is struggling to be consistent. And I think that could very much be a problem throughout the season, especially when you run into a team like Tennessee who can put up points. So, that's a concern. Yeah, that's really my takeaway for the Missouri Georgia game is there is a cause for some caution here with Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. I think that first of all, I don't think Missouri's a terrible team, like not how they have been the last few years. So I mean, I will give them that credit, so it doesn't seem like we're saying Georgia somehow lost to a kindergarten, but or almost lost. But I think that I do think that Missouri kind of took their foot off the gas with the defense. That they thought, okay, let's sit back and try and make sure we don't give up. I hate that methodology. I understand why it is there, but if your aggressive defense is working, keep making it work. Like, keep getting pressure, keep getting those 3 and outs, keep getting them into 3rd and long. Like the sit back thing, sure, it might chew up a little bit of clock, but if you're giving them points at the end of it, what are you accomplishing? You're just letting them get closer to you. So, I mean, Georgia, in my opinion, got a little lucky that Missouri decided to get more conservative. Yeah, I'm not. Brock Bowers is like it for them. Like, they are good in other positions. He's the only great one. And that is the difference between the other Georgia teams, because previously they've had a lot of great position players, not just one like they have now.
Yeah, I mean they had Pickens there last year. I mean he's showing what he was able to do
James
for
Cook.
Georgia. Yep, James Cook. I mean, like you said, they had a bunch of playmakers on that offensive side of the ball that Stetson Bennett could get the ball to and let them just do what they do. And now it's like you said, it's literally Bowers, and that's really about it. So someone's going to have to step up and be an alpha for a playmaker for Georgia for us to change our minds on them, because they're if they don't, they're going to be a stagnant offense. Or a very slow moving offense. They're going to just have to win slugfest defensively. And, against a healthy Alabama, I don't see Georgia beating a healthy Alabama with Bryce Young at quarterback. I just don't see that happening.
Well, I think you made a good point, Peyton, as far as maybe this could be the blueprint in a way, or teams can look at the tape as far as the first half, the first 3 quarters of Missouri defense, where you really need to make Stetson Bennett beat you, right? You cannot play lackadaisical off, prevent defense, the bend don't break approach. And that's really kind of like you said, they got lucky. They were able to get back in that game because Missouri really laid back a bit, gave that cushion, let them use the middle of the field, the mid range, short passes, and really took their foot off the gas on defense. It felt like, it felt like that they kind of don't let them beat us as far as the deep pass, and they kind of just laid back a bit. Maybe that's the blueprint on this offense. And obviously you still need to be able to score against that amazing defense. But as far as the schedule coming up, they do have a 2-game cushion here with Auburn and Vanderbilt. I don't see them losing either of those games. But then you have 4 games. It really isn't a terrible schedule overall. Georgia, I will say, it gets off a little easy here, but a 4-game stretch against Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and then Kentucky. And 2 of the last 2 are road games, the Mississippi State and Kentucky game. Those are the 2 road games. 4 reasonably tough games. 2, obviously, I'd probably say Kentucky and Tennessee are going to be the really tough battles there. Do we think this Georgia team can remain undefeated if they don't change the way this offense is working?
No.
I agree.
I'm saying that as a team that I think can beat them.
Sure.
But no, I don't think they can.
And I think if they run into strong offensive teams, like their defense is good, but I don't know, if they run into some strong offensive teams, I feel like they're going to struggle. Mississippi State's another one. They have a very good offense. So, like we just talked about, where Will Rogers is having a very good season, spreading the football around. So, that's another team that could possibly knock them off. And then, like you said, Kentucky, they kind of showed us this week that maybe offensively, like they're just mediocre. They're okay. They're not stagnant, but they're just okay. So I don't know.
They have a great running back, but they live and die by Will Levis.
And let's talk about that game. Let's bring that up because I know, Jared, I don't remember who you picked in that game. I picked Kentucky because I thought Will Levis was going to be able to get them over the hump. And I'll save a few of my thoughts in a second. But Peyton, I know you were all over Ole Miss here. What did you see to that game? Did you see Ole Miss be the better team? Did you think it was just maybe home field advantage? What did you see come out of that game on both of these teams? What will you take away from that?
Certain teams, I will let home field advantage play a little bit more into them. And if Ole Miss is one of those teams where if they're playing at home and they're ranked, there's just, there's kind of a 12th guy on the field that you're having to play against. And I think that's the case for a lot of Big Ten teams, a lot of SEC teams, some ACC teams, Jared. But no, the biggest factor that I saw was Lane Kiffin. And I hate that he was the biggest factor that I saw. But he is a lot like Hugh Freeze in that he is really good at identifying and exploiting his opponent's weaknesses, especially offensively. So when you look at the Kentucky defense, they're not as strong as they were last year. So I figured, okay, I think Ole Miss can do enough. And Jackson Dart has a lot of potential. So that's, in my mind, all Lane Kiffin needs is potential and, a good plan going into it. Who kind of surprised me a little bit was the Ole Miss defense. That defensive line was sturdy. Man, they showed up to play all 4 quarters. So they're kind of the happy part of, like, I didn't expect it, but great. Like, you guys proved me right. With Kentucky, like I said, great running back. Rodriguez is great. But if things are not 100% like right with Levis, then the entire offense is just thrown off kilter. I don't even think the finger injury for him really like threw him off, but I think it might have gotten into the heads of some of the guys around him. Wondering, okay, wow, they're actually really knocking us around. They hurt our starting quarterback. Like, I don't know. They actually look really good, more hungry for this. So, of course, you sit down and talk to the players. I'm sure they tell you, no, I didn't think that at all. But the way that it actually like shapes out on the field, it appeared that way. So, yeah, Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart, I think, were a good upset combination.
Yeah, I was impressed. I really was impressed by Jackson Dart, especially in the first half. He made some big plays, and he showed the talent and the potential that he can show in the next coming years, especially with Lane Kiffin, if those two remain together. And like you said, that defensive line really showed up and played hard. I don't know. Just watching that game, it just felt like Kentucky was the better team, and they lost that game. I don't know. Maybe neutral site, if it's at home, maybe it plays out different. Maybe, like you said, I don't know if Will Levis was really affected by the injury, but maybe the team was in general. And so maybe that could have factored in as well. But there was something off. I really did think that Kentucky looked like the more talented and better team. Mm-hmm. Maybe it came down to coaching. I'm not 100% sure, but they shot themselves in the foot too many times. And they had a lot of chances to take over or win that game, and they didn't. So I think what I take away is Kentucky is still a very good team. Will Levis is a very, very good college football player and quarterback. And he's a real and that team rallies around him. And if, like you said, if something's off with him, it throws off the team. But this guy kind of has that Tebow-esque vibe in college where he's a leader and the team rallies around him, but the team is all about him and the team is him in a way. So if there's something off, then they might not win. So there is something there, but I will say the Lane Kiffin factor really played a big role there. And Jackson Dart has a lot of potential. He showed a lot of raw skill there, especially in the first half.
And he even, for Jackson Dart, I feel bad because a lot of his contribution doesn't make it on the stat sheet. because he didn't throw a touchdown. He had, I think, one pick that he threw. So, like, by QB standards, throwing the ball, it didn't look like all that great. But in the middle of the field, when he had a long second down or a third down that was crucial, he made plays. He was able to scramble. He was able to get completions. And I was just very impressed with how, and he was able to rush effectively when he had to. But I mean, yeah, when it counted, he showed up.
So this is interesting, and this is a big reason why you can't just look at statistics when it comes to making a determination of who had a better game. So if you subtract, you don't even look at QBR. Will Levis was 18 of 24, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jackson Dart was 15 of 29, 213 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns. However, you would think that Will Levis had a much higher QBR. His QBR was 47.7 and Jackson Dart's was 72.3. So I think that actually goes a lot into what Peyton was saying, that when the plays really mattered, so like the big plays, second, third down where they needed something to happen, Jackson Dart made something happen. Whether that was with his arm or with his legs, because he did add an additional 40 yards on the ground. And Levis had negative 19 yards on the ground. So, I feel like the statistics don't really paint the true story of which quarterback played better. It sounds like Jackson Dart had a better game overall because he made bigger plays. So that's to go to your point, Peyton, as to Jackson Dart just having a better overall game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into our picks. We've got a lot of good games. This was tough to be able to just narrow down to 5 picks for the week. Not a ton of top 25 matchups, but definitely a lot of good games and a lot of unranked teams that are still good. Had a couple of falling outs, so this was a little tough to narrow down to 5. Let's save the Tennessee LSU game for last, so Peyton can elaborate on that game. And let's go over to, I believe this is the one that's going to be game day, correct? In Kansas. TCU, number 17, going on the road. Kansas is ranked number 19. So number 17, TCU at number 19, Kansas. This is the game day. Crew, what do you guys think about this game?
I so much want to pick Kansas because I believe that they have got a turning point. Daniels is playing great. They got a really solid coaching staff. I really, really want to pick Kansas. And so I'm going to go with TCU.
And so,
I mean, that's perfectly
tough.
I
mean, the TCU defense has been pretty effective, which typically they're kind of a rollover type of defense with the whole Gary Patterson, may he rest in peace, defenses that were there. But no, the TCU offense it's got teeth. So I think that Kansas is effective at getting down the field. TCU is like professional at getting down the field right now. So the Kansas defense has been a lot better this year than it has been in a long, long time. But I just think TCU overwhelms them.
Yeah, you kind of summed it up pretty well. I think I'm going to have to go TCU here, although I will note Kansas's schedule thus far has been a little bit more impressive. I know TCU had the very impressive win last week against Oklahoma, but their 4 games before that, or only 3 games. They've only played 4 games thus far. So there are 3 games before that, SMU, Colorado, not too many impressive games thus far. So the Oklahoma game really put them on the map, but they just do seem a little bit more professional. So I will say TCU pulls this one off.
This is the game.
Oh, you want to do it. You want to do it.
This is the game for me that would maybe swing me towards picking Jalen Daniels. And I think it may come down to the last minute in this game. I feel like it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be high 30s, low 40s type scoring game, back and forth. 2 great offenses going at each other. I'm only going to take Kansas because they're at home. And that's the only reason I'll take Kansas. And a part of me is like, I just want to see it happen. But I truly believe that they can beat them because of Jalen Daniels. And this is it. This will show, hey, this is a quality football team. Is Kansas going to be able to actually make a run and be a good team throughout the rest of the season against a quality TCU team? So if they can get over this hump and Jalen Daniels is the reason for them getting over this hump, then that would swing me towards picking him as my Heisman for the year. This is a big Heisman moment game for him. Game day, prime time, national spotlight against a team that just destroyed Oklahoma, the class of the Big 12. This is a huge stage. I'm going to go with Kansas, and I think Jalen Daniels does have his Heisman moment in this game.
All right, let's move. You wanted to add anything there?
I was going to say, does he have his moment where you want to switch him as your Heisman pick?
Well, that's
right
what I was gonna say. Yeah, if you're saying all this, and
you really believe in him.
I say that's what I want, and that's what I feel like can happen. I gotta see it first. I gotta see it first.
Then you should take him before he's gone. You might not get the chance next week.
You're trying to bait me. You're trying to bait me.
It's all good. It's all good. Let's move over to Texas and Oklahoma. Two teams that are unranked now. Oklahoma coming off 2 losses. This game is in Dallas, and Texas is a 7-point favorite. I believe Quinn Ewers is scheduled to come back this game. This is his target game. I don't know if there's been news thus far this week, but I know last week he was targeting a comeback. Hudson Card has been okay and been able to be a good stopgap. But if Quinn Ewers is back, I'm not going to put any stipulations here. I'm going to assume he's back. I'm going to pick Texas. I think Texas wins this. Oklahoma gets 3 straight losses. Give me the Longhorns.
I feel sad because I love Brent Venables.
What's wrong with that defense, Jared? What is going on?
I don't. Well, they did lose some talent because of course Lincoln Riley leaving. It's going to take time. Hopefully Oklahoma is patient with him, but I think they will be. He's one of those guys that I think he'll eventually get the results, but not this year. I'm going with Texas as well. I feel like they've looked like just the better team. They've already played some tough games on their schedule. They're battle tested. Oklahoma's been steamrolled the last couple games. So give me Texas to continue that trend.
Is that with or without Quinn Ewers? Not that we're putting this in our picks, but you think regardless?
Honestly, I think if Quinn Ewers doesn't play, they still win. If Quinn Ewers plays, they win by double digits.
They cover.
Yes.
Are they undefeated if he doesn't get hurt and he plays every game?
Yes.
I think they would have beat Alabama, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, that's so sad.
It's a big
feel bad for him too.
And like Peyton said, that was another McCoy situation. Good gracious. Texas should have won the national championship that year too, but I digress.
Yeah. I'm going Texas as well. Regardless of who starts at quarterback, Hudson Card or Quinn Ewers, I think Texas wins. Like Jared, though, I think if Ewers starts, probably a little bit more. But it's not even the competing offenses. I trust the Texas defense more. That's the biggest reason why I'm picking them. Yeah.
Ironic to say.
Yeah, it's weird to say in Big 12 football. It's weird to say against Brent Venables. But up to this point, I mean, West Virginia has looked like a pretty decent team, and holding them to 20, was pretty impressive. Holding Alabama to 19, like, I don't know, they have shown up in some pretty big games, and I know both teams are going to be ready to go for this particular game every single year. I feel like it's more close than it is anything else. So I almost feel like Texas by 3.
I like it. I like it. That's a clean sweep by Texas. Hopefully, we're all hoping Quinn Ewers is hopefully back by this game. Something to keep an eye on throughout the week with updates. But it's always more exciting when he's out there, and especially when Texas football is playing well. So let's move on to the next game, an unexpected one, an unexpected top 25 rivalry here. Utah, the number 11 Utah Utes on the road at number 18 UCLA, who are now undefeated at 5-0. Utah's coming in as a 4.5-point favorite here. To me, this is really a toss-up. Cam Rising's been playing really well for Utah. They've really cleaned the ship after that Florida loss. They really beat down Oregon State pretty well last week. I think their defense is a lot stronger. I know that UCLA offense has been humming. We know what Chip Kelly can do, but give me Utah. I think they just are the more established defense and program as far as talent the last couple of years. I'll stick with Utah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I see South Alabama on UCLA's schedule, and they beat them by 1. And South Alabama is usually so bad. Like, I don't understand how they only beat them by 1 in a home game. So I like Utah as well. I feel like UCLA had a fantastic game last week against Washington. That was a bit of a surprise, I would say, for them to look as good and as sharp as they did against Washington, because Washington looked like the class of the Pac-12 throughout the beginning of this season. So I do like what I've seen from Utah, though. Like you, Thomas, Oregon State's not a pushover this year, and they pushed them over. So they've certainly looked like a better football team since that Week 1 loss to Florida. What could have been for them if they were able to beat Florida, because I know they were preseason ranked number 7, and after that loss, they definitely dropped quite a bit. They've made up some ground because a lot of teams ahead have lost. So there's still hope for Utah, and this is a must-win for them. So I'm going to go with Utah as well.
I really want to pick UCLA, but I can't because of some of the points that Jared raised. I just think that their offense has found their stride, but same thing again. Like, I'm going with defense. If I give the edge to a team here, it's Utah. Cam Rising has looked great. He's been consistent. Dorian has been good. I mean, he's been having to try and claw his team out of different holes. But if I'm given the edge, I'm giving it to the defense, and that is Utah.
All right, another sweep here for Utah. This last game, I know we haven't talked about the Tennessee game, but this last game, I fluctuated on who to put here. Obviously, there's Texas A&M and Alabama. There is Oregon and Arizona as a decent matchup. You have not Clemson and Boston College, but Washington State and USC. A BYU Notre Dame is a pretty good matchup. So I fluctuated here on what to put here as the last game to pick. I think that the most intriguing one to me was Florida State at number 14, NC State, coming off obviously that big game with Clemson. Florida State was ranked last week and had a tough loss to Wake Forest. They held in there, and their defense showed up pretty well. This game, NC State's at home and are only a 3.5-point favorite. I really like that. I think that this is going to be a big bounce-back game. They'll figure out how to get the offense a little bit more involved here, and that defense will really shut down Florida State. I think NC State wins this, and I think it's pretty convincing. I don't know if it's double digits, but I think they have control of this game for the majority of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think NC State's defense is going to shut down Florida State. Jordan Travis has had a very good season this year for Florida State to Florida State standards over the last few years. So they may have found a quarterback moving forward for them. But I feel like the defensive unit for NC State, like we talked about, they're one of the most seniored in the country. And so I feel like for those reasons, I like NC State's defense to shut down Florida State's offense. And we talked about, we know that NC State they have a capable quarterback with Leary. So they'll put up points against Florida State's defense. I like NC State to win, and I think they'll cover as well. I think NC State will cover.
NC State. That's my theme for tonight, is I'm going with defense. Florida State, I just think they're just missing. NC State has more pieces where Florida State is missing more than what they would need to win this type of game. NC State, I also think, is going to really try to turn heads after the loss at Clemson. And NC State this year is one of those teams where I don't want to play them after a hard loss.
That's a really good point. I like that. I think, after a hard loss, Dave Dorian will have that team dialed up. Devin Leary will get them fired up as well. He's a real leader there. All right, Peyton. Well, we waited too long. Let's get into it. Let's give you the floor. Tennessee, number 8, on the road. Number 25, LSU. What are your thoughts?
I don't think this is a rollover game like we thought at the beginning of the season. I think LSU is going to be hyped up. They're excited to play spoiler like they did with Mississippi State earlier, like they were able to do, playing Auburn as well. I don't think they were, a lot of people were expecting LSU to like turn heads, but I feel like they just looked like a more efficient team against Auburn. What I think this comes down to, it comes down to defense, but it comes down to the defense against each quarterback. And I give that edge to Tennessee. Hendon Hooker has obviously started off the year great. Super happy with how he's done for the most part. I think that they're almost preparing for this game in the same way that they went back and watched film on Pitt, the way that we were rushed with that defensive line, a lot of creative blitz packages as well. And Pitt really threw Hendon Hooker out of his element. It overwhelmed our offensive line and it put us in a bad spot. I think we're going to prepare in a similar way, that we're really trying to pay attention to our pass rush, our coverages, to be able to get the ball out quicker, and really try and keep our offense clicking, getting down there, getting points. We can't. When I punt, when Tennessee punts, like, it makes me nervous because I'm like, okay, it's not working. That's not what we're trying to set ourselves up to do. Obviously, every team feels that way, but for us, moving fast, keeping the defense on their heels, I'm like, okay, this isn't good. The defense has us on our heels. Jaden Daniels, while he has played well in a couple of games, I just don't think he's the guy. He's one of those like Zach Mettenberger, like in the middle type quarterbacks to get them to their next big team. I think he's got tremendous talent. He's got some pretty good, plays under his belt, but his decision-making is questionable. And I want our defense to be able to exploit that. I want him to get happy feet in the pocket, for him to pull it when he needs to be standing tall, looking down the field. I want him to pull it. And for, Jeremy Banks, who likely might end up spying a bit on Jaden Daniels, to just have a field day with that. I think we'll see a lot of corner and safety blitzes from us, getting McCullough up in there, as well as some others. I think that we're going to try and get our own early pressure on the quarterback. That's something that, our defenses have not been great the last several years, as you've seen us lose to many an opponent. This year, I think our defense has really stepped up with a lot of guys that nobody had on their radar. Byron Young is a force on that defensive line, and I'm just really impressed with how the entire defense has shown up. Our secondary, we lost Burrell. That hurts. But even our guys coming in off the bench, they're doing their job. They're coming in, they're performing well. I think that we learned a lot with the close game against Florida and having them kind of push their way back in. I think we learned a lot with Pitt making it competitive. So I'm excited to see the game plan that Heupel has coming into this. A key for our success is being able to run the ball. Being able to pick up the pass rush and being able to run the ball, I think, is going to open up the floodgates for Hendon Hooker and our deep wide receiving core. Tennessee by 90.
Yeah, honestly, you took away one of the points I was going to make. I feel like you guys are certainly going to have to run the football based upon what I was looking at with a few statistics. It looks like LSU likes to try to to stop the run. It looks like they're pretty solid at being able to do so, but you guys are also very good at being able to run the football. I know that you're one of the best in the country at throwing the football, getting the ball down the field through the air. But yeah, I think running the football is going to be important. I also feel like because this is something that Tennessee has struggled with this year has just been defense in general, especially on this. It looks like the secondary has struggled the most. So I would really, to me, it would be make Jaden Daniels beat you with his arm. It doesn't look like he is. I mean, he's accurate. He's 67%, but he's only averaging 7 yards a throw. So, or 7 yards per completion. He's only got 6 touchdowns on the season. So I almost feel like you guys drop back in zone quite a bit. He looks like he also likes to run. So like you said, QB spy, I feel like that's going to be important as well. Something else that I think is important too, this is a big game for your head coach. I think that this is certainly one that the team could overlook because the very next week you play Alabama at home. So this is a big one for him to say, hey, this is a good LSU team. We need to take care of business this week against a good LSU team and build our resume. I think the key word for both teams this week is opportunity, because I think LSU looks at this game and says, all right, we have 1 loss on our schedule. Let's get a great win against a top 10 team against Tennessee. We have the ability to do that. I think that's what they're probably preaching to their guys. Hey, we're still in this thing. We cracked the top 25. We're playing against a top 10 team. Let's go make a statement this week. So I feel like for them, they're seeing this as an opportunity to turn their season around. And then for you guys, it's more of an opportunity to say, hey, this is going to be our 3rd top 25 win for the season. Let's get this win and then turn around and see about trying to knock off number 1 the following week. So all of that said, I do like Tennessee. I feel like Tennessee is ultimately just the more talented team at this point. I like how Heupel has the job that he's done this season has been very good, especially offensively. The biggest thing for me, I want to see Tennessee's defense step up. That's what I want to see. And if they can do that against a decent offense, then I feel like Tennessee should roll. Honestly, I feel like they should certainly get the better of LSU. With it being in the swamp, I know, or in Baton Rouge, I know that's certainly going to make it a test. But I think I think Tennessee comes out of this game with a win.
One more point before jumping over to Thomas. You jogged my memory there, Jared. With defense, we have to get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. Florida was 5 of 6 on 4th down. That is gross to be able to see as the opposing team. Like, cannot have that. And I think their 4th down that they didn't convert was in the 4th quarter. Like, it took them a while to be able to not be able to convert one.
You know what that reminds me of, Peyton? That reminds me of, remember Clemson in 2013-14? That was a big issue with us, was the 3rd and longs and the 4th and longs. It was like, what is going on? And it came back to bite us in the season too. I mean, there were a few teams that wound up beating us that year because they were converting on stuff like that. So yeah, you want to see that tightened up for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not much I can add here. I think, when I'm looking at a game like this, your general first inclination is look at head coaching matchup and quarterback matchup. I think on paper, obviously, Brian Kelly, LSU gets the coaching advantage as far as pedigree. But then you look at quarterback, and I think that's a larger disparity there. I really do think Hendon Hooker is far and away better than Jaden Daniels. He's shown a lot of, like you said, he's shown a lot of promise or at least ability, especially in the run game. I just don't know if he's going to be able to take over a game and really put them over the top there. I think the only key factor here that makes me slightly nervous is that it isn't Baton Rouge. It's at LSU. And we know how tough that it is to win there. You talked about it with teams like Ole Miss, just teams at home like that in the SEC. Especially, I think LSU, the environment is probably top 5. When this team is good and now they're ranked, that is a top 5 place to play. Probably one of the top 5 hardest places to play on the road. So I think that's the only thing that makes me nervous, and it's probably baked into the line here, which makes Tennessee only get 3-point favorite, so only by a field goal. And I think that is basically the fact that it's in Baton Rouge, and that is the ultimate factor right there. But all that said, I think talent alone gets them through. I think Hendon Hooker really showcases against I think this LSU defense is good. I think they're really strong and fast. So I think he makes a statement here against a really solid defense on the road. Tennessee wins. And there it is. We have our picks. We'll leave a little segment here, and we'll see for our absentee podcast friends and see their picks, see if they agree with us. I think we've agreed on most of these picks. I don't know if we varied on any of them, but we'll leave a spot here and see if they agree with us as well.
What's good? How are we doing? Here to give my picks for the week. First of all, Tennessee at LSU. Nervous about the game. I am nervous, but we got to ride. We got to ride with Tennessee. You're going to pick Tennessee there. TCU at Kansas. This is where it ends. I said Kansas would lose Iowa State or TCU. Kyle thought they'd lose to Iowa State. I didn't think so. I thought they'd pull that one off. Here they lose. Give me TCU. Texas at Oklahoma. Again, real nervous. Both quarterback situations are pretty interesting. I'm going to bank on Quinn Ewers coming back, so give me the Longhorns. Utah at UCLA. Give me Utah. I think this is going to be a really good game, really entertaining. But Utah overall, I think, is the better team. So give me Utah. Then finally, Florida State at NC State. NC State has had Florida State's number for the most part. Again, I think it'll be a close game. But we're going to take NC State in that one.
All right, everybody. Sorry I wasn't able to be on the show this week. Sick with COVID, so let's take the moment here to get my picks in for the week. So for the first game, we have number 8 Tennessee traveling, taking on number 25 LSU at the real Death Valley, Jared. Give me Tennessee here. Like I said before, I really don't believe too much in this LSU team. I don't believe too much in Brian Kelly. And Tennessee is looking really good. Definitely Heisman potential there with Hooker. Number 8 in the country, hopefully win this week and keep on climbing up the polls there. Number 17 TCU traveling to take on Kansas. We don't need to go far too into this. I know Kansas won again last week, but they barely won against Iowa State, who's an okay team, not a great team. Give me the Horned Frogs all day long. Texas taking on Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Texas. Longhorns, I think, especially with having Yorga coming back this week, I think they're going to be a much stronger team and going to be what they were back at the Alabama game again, I think. So give me Texas. Utah, number 11 Utah taking on number 19 UCLA. I watched UCLA last week play against Washington. UCLA is really good. They looked really proficient both on offense and defense, played really well complementary football across the board. They played with a lot of toughness. Now, Utah has also looked really good, so hard saying. I'm going to say Utah on this one. I know it is at UCLA, but nobody's going to the Rose Bowl to watch UCLA's Bruins, sadly. And finally, we have the unranked Florida State University Seminoles taking on the North Carolina State Wolfpack. This is at North Carolina State. Give me NC State. Let's go Wolfpack.
All right, well, let's move over to the NFL. We've got another interesting thing here, and Peyton's going to drop for a second. And Jared, this will just be you and I. We'll say goodbye to Peyton for a bit and see if he can join us at the tail end. An interesting week here in the NFL. 4 weeks done. We're going to get over to our Jets, and this kind of falls into the next week of we get to play the Miami Dolphins, and Tua will not be starting. This is going to be a Teddy Bridgewater game, revenge of Teddy B on the Jets trade him over to the Saints. But we need to talk Tua quickly. Obviously, this game happened on Thursday night against Cincinnati, and a lot of us questioned if he should have been playing at that point. Obviously, we knew what happened in the game previously against Buffalo in the heat, and they wrote that off as a back spasm injury, him wobbling all over the field, and eventually returning to that game. So then only 4 days later, he's playing on Thursday night. He gets slammed to the ground, and it's bad. It's one of the most, graphic scenes on a football field that you'll see, with the fingers. and them having to cart him off. And they finally have now ruled him out for the next week. We'll see how long he is out. But Jared, give me your thoughts here real quick on, this whole concussion discussion and, should he have been playing? Should he not have been playing? But just how this has kind of played out. And we've already seen the independent neurologist get fired, who did not follow protocol, it seemed like, per investigations. So there's already been some firings here. But give me your thoughts on this whole situation with Tua and how this played out.
Yeah, and like you said, just from the eye test, from what a fan is seeing, it certainly looked like it wasn't back spasms. It looked like something wasn't right after he landed on his head. And, one can only speculate, but it certainly seemed as if he was having concussion-like symptoms. That's what it looked like from an optics point of view. Then, like we've talked about, for him to turn right back around, and 4 days later, he's playing Thursday Night Football and gets thrown on his head. And honestly, the hit that he took didn't look like it was that severe when he went to the ground against the Bengals. I don't remember who tackled him, but it didn't really look like it was that much of a tackle. But he landed on the back of his head again. And that was a disturbing moment for anyone that was watching the game. That's really been the story, has just been how disturbing of an image that was, to see someone on the field and their body responding in that way. It was scary. It was very scary for anyone watching. And I mean, my heart goes out to him. Obviously things are bigger than football. And for him to go down like that, it was certainly a concern for any fan that's watching the game. So my hope is that, of course, he's able to make a quick return. It was very disappointing to kind of hear that the individual that was checking on him, that there was protocols that were broken. So, how that's not a good look for the NFL. It's not a good look at all, because it's saying, well, how are we screening these folks to actually put almost lives on the line of whether or not someone's able to go back into a football game? Because brain injuries are extremely, they can be extremely dangerous. So
it's a different class, right? It's a whole different class from injuries, right? Normal injuries, sometimes you can push through. Knee injuries, things like that, it might take you out, but and you could sometimes, there are ways to push through injuries or come back earlier than you should, and tough it out, as the football culture would tell you. But brain injuries and head injuries are a totally different class, and they need to be taken that way, right? You cannot now no longer lump them together into the normal injury category. And I think the NFL is really going to have to look into their process as far as, how do we treat head injuries and concussions in this protocol? And it's better to be cautious than not cautious. It's better to be overcautious and over implement procedures with this than to not. And obviously they haven't. They've put some, over the years they've definitely improved the standards, but I think this is the tipping point where you have to put some standards in. Is if there's any inclination, even if you aren't diagnosed with a concussion right away, right? Symptoms might come later on. It might be hard to, they're not putting these guys in a brain scan right away, things like this. So maybe there need to be standards of, you are a minimum sitting 1 week if you have any symptoms, any eye test of stumbling around, anything like that. Minimum 1 week you are out, right? Something like that. So, we don't have another situation where a player is back 4 days later just because he wasn't diagnosed with a concussion, and now we know protocols might have not been followed correctly.
Did y'all hear Ninkovich and his take on, honestly, like, and granted, of course, I'm not going to like him just because of the Patriot past, but tremendous respect for what he shared. And one of the points that he brought up was, if at any point part of the decision to determine if the player is okay is asking that player, then you're already misstepping. Because when you have a concussion like that, you don't remember anything. So even if you come to and you're like, yeah, I'm fine, you don't know what happened. Like, you don't remember it. So yeah, as far as you know, you're fine. But everybody else saw your head get cracked on the ground. And sure, it might not have been as hard on the ground as the second time against Cincinnati, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't take that much for your head to just hit just right for you to actually sustain a concussion. So I valued his take quite a bit. I think there's going to be quite a few former players, maybe not current ones, but former players who speak up a little bit more as the Players Association starts to like push this quite a bit. But yeah, I just, at some point, you have to think, and I mean, even Mike McDaniel, like, you need to take over from the medical staff. And it's not even, sure, you could say it can go both ways where you overrule medical staff and put him back in. And I don't know, maybe that played into this. I have no idea what those behind the door discussions were. I'm sure we'll find out. But even if the medical staff says, yeah, he's good, no concussion, they're like, he still hit his head really hard and then was walking funny after. Even if it's a back issue, maybe we keep him out a little bit, just to really double down on this. I put a lot of responsibility on the head coach because the head coach is watching. As much as I want to say that the medical staff is watching for these things, you also see the medical staff down there, with the exception of like the immediate trainers, that are kind of just like hanging out on the sideline, chatting it up. Like, so I don't necessarily want to put a lot on their shoulders that they are paying super close attention to what happened to bring on what they're supposed to be checking for. And especially a head injury is different than a sprained ankle or a torn ACL. You're going to see some physical symptoms or differences in the body, see it, feel it, be able to test for it differently. The concussion, in a lot of ways, is that judgment call. And I would like to see how often the concussion protocol is updated. I think it would be good if it was updated every year before the season. Educate the referees on it, educate the coaches on it, educate the training staff on it. Every single year, everybody's getting the most up-to-date information on this so that they can best help those players. I look at Sunday, Darius Leonard, it was his first game back for us. He didn't even make it through a whole half because he broke his nose. Well, they ruled him out with a concussion as well because of just the impact that he took to his head. He looked fine, was moving around okay, other than the fact that his nose was pouring blood. I didn't even see the hit that caused the broken nose. But I think that was also kind of in response to, we got to be really, really careful with this kind of stuff going forward. So I think other teams are on notice with this kind of thing. Really disappointed to see that he went in 4 days later. He's not going to know better because I don't think he knew what his brain had undergone or had seen it.
Right. Yeah.
I was actually out with some people at a place watching that game when it happened. And of course, we're laughing a little bit because one of the people, she had two on her fantasy team. And then I saw the hit and I got sick to my stomach. And I feel like we tend to have a more traditionalist approach, all of us on this podcast, to sports when it comes to like the toughness of play and, allowing people to just get out there and play without the regulations. I don't know. That hit made me sick. And it's not because of the way he went down. It's because he went down and we knew what happened before. The other person that I was with, I asked her, she's in medical school right now. I asked her, I was like, if you've gotten a concussion, are you like prone to just getting one? And like in my own non-medical mind, I'm like, of course you'd be prone to it. She was like, oh, absolutely. It's just like anything else. Like you twist your ankle, you're more prone to twist your ankle until you let it heal again. So I'm like, the fact that the second one was even more of a violent contact to the ground, this makes me sick.
That's the thing. I mean, 2 concussions most likely now within less than a week. And like you said, you're more prone, a lot of medical, we're not medical experts or anything like that, but, you're talking to someone in medical school there and getting, their feedback, and you watch a lot of these medical experts give their take on this. And it is sickening, how there really is an impact of getting two concussions that close together, and how prone you could be to get a second one after first, and like that. So there are real implications there of rushing someone back when there doesn't need to be that. And there's, a first-time head coach who's super young, for a super young quarterback who's trying to prove himself. Probably a whole new staff, right? It's a new coach, so it's a new staff. And, Miami's been in trouble in the past with other issues, so they might be on edge. They're finally think they have a good season. You don't want to imply anything, but, there's a lot of pressure in the NFL, so you never know what has factored into putting him back out there, which is really sad. And we're just hoping for the best for Tua. Hope he takes the necessary time off and there aren't any lingering any issues.
But before we move on, one other thing, like the fact that, and Ninkovich referenced this on the show, with the fact that concussions were a part of ending his career. Like, that's why he stopped. We look at other guys like Austin Collie, such a good receiver with Manning, but concussions just cut him. Yeah, they cut him early, and it wasn't multiple in a week. It was just multiple in a year, like in a season that it cut down. Seeing Tua go down the second time, the image that popped in my head was when Kuechly was crying going off the field, and that just immediately popped in my head when I saw him go down like that. I'm just like, not again. Like, I don't want to see another one like this just because somebody was forced back on the field. So
yeah, Austin Collie was immediately who I was thinking of when you were talking about concussions, because that was his career, was just concussion. So, for Tua to have two back to back, because I mean, it's almost safe to say that he had one against Buffalo, and for him to get yet another one, it could be very severe, the second one. So, it certainly opens the door for him to have concussion issues throughout the rest of his career. I mean, we really hope that's not the case, but I mean, at some point you have to kind of make that decision of what's more important, my life or football. So hoping that he can get back to the field.
Yeah.
Well, let's get over to fan perspectives, and we'll start with, we're already in the kind of somber, mindset, and we'll bring up the Colts here. And Peyton, I know it's been a tough start to the season, obviously, and now you start having reports from Peter King that Jim Irsay's getting a little itchy. He's getting a little, there's a lot of pressure going on as far as, is Chris Ballard, is the coach the right situation here? Is Matt Ryan the quarterback to help you get to that next step? And obviously with Matt Ryan, it hasn't been a good start. You can argue with coach and GM combo, there's been some more proven track record here, but another loss here for the Colts. Where are you standing as far as the season thus far? Because they have a quick turnaround, right? They play on Thursday.
Yeah. Broncos on Thursday. Thank God it's not a team known for their offense, but I guess we'll learn a lot about ourselves in that. This was not a repeat of the Jacksonville game. And I think in a lot of people's minds it was, just because we lost. You see us beat a team like the Chiefs and you're like, oh, they can beat anybody. Okay, maybe so. Still got some things that we need to work out, like we were talking about in the group chat with the Jets. I mean, I mentioned it's great. It was a great week, but we got to see consistency. Same thing with the Colts. Like, it was a good week, our win against the Chiefs. They certainly looked not good and not like themselves. We happened to eke it out. But consistency, and we didn't have it this week. So one thing that I did notice on the sidelines, Frank Reich had the play card in his hands, and he was talking into his mic a little bit more. I don't know to what degree he was involved in the play calling, but I think that influenced the fact that we were more productive on offense. That was a big one for me. I felt like we needed something some leadership from him to be able to get the offense cooking again. It was not a terrible game for us. We just lost. The defense played very, very well. We gave up at the end of at the end of the game, obviously exhausted, just kind of tired out. A lot of guys were huffing and puffing with these longer drives with the Titans. Of course, Derrick Henry is always going to exhaust a defense when they're having to tackle him. But our defense, I wasn't super upset with, especially with Leonard going out, the blow that probably took to them mentally. Bobby Okereke is an amazing linebacker. He is phenomenal. I think that because it used to be Darius Leonard and Anthony Walker. And then for whatever reason, I think part of it was because we had drafted Okereke. We allowed Anthony Walker to leave, and he ended up signing with the Browns. I feel so bad he got injured. He's such a good linebacker. But Okereke Leonard has like developed him into, and the coaching staff has developed him into Anthony Walker 2.0 coming in. So I feel very secure that Okereke is leading the defense. EJ Speed, who we also drafted, I think the year after Okereke, has really stepped up to be that replacement and has been effective at linebacker as well. So defensively, I'm not super upset there. Our defensive line looked much better this week. This was probably the best week that I've seen of them, even in a loss. Stephon Gilmore doesn't know what state he's in. Like, he has no idea where he is. And I think that's the case for multiple guys in the secondary. I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's ability. I have no idea. But each time that Gilmore gets burned, other guys are in his face in that secondary yelling at him. I'm like, okay, we got a bunch of young guys. Like Kenny Moore is not like a guy that's been in the league for 14 years. And like Kenny Moore is sharing his mind out there. You know, Gilmore's looking like, I thought I had help. And they're like, no, you need to know you didn't have help. So, I mean, Gilmore's been our weakest point, and that really sucks because I thought he was going to be our strongest point in the secondary. But I don't know. We've got gaps. The Gus Bradley's got to get it together and figure out what those are. And if that means benching Gilmore, do it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, this loss didn't look as bad as some of the previous losses, especially like you said, Jacksonville. It really was close, right? There was a lot of things that went right. Obviously, you have to limit the turnovers, and Matt Ryan has done a bad job thus far, right? Interceptions, fumbles. He really needs to take better care of the football. Obviously something we saw Carson Wentz do better last year, and obviously he had his own issues, different types of issues, locker room, leadership, things like that. But I don't know. Matt Ryan has to step up and kind of, protect the ball better. I really do think, like you said, Gilmore has been a big issue, and then left tackle. Left tackle's been a big issue as well. They haven't been able to get the run game going. Matt Ryan's getting a lot of pressure, and I think that gap on the offensive line has been left tackle. Dan Orlovsky does a lot of great breakdowns, and he did one recently with the Colts, showing the issues at left tackle, but also showing them how they're so close to breaking free and being, the team that we thought they could be. There's just one person usually that's just not holding up their bargain during that play, right? The play, it might be drawn up well. The majority of the team is in the right position and executing. It's just been one player typically costing the team. So maybe, like you said, Peyton, on offense and defense, there need to be some personnel decisions here on figuring out, is it a repeat offender like Stephon Gilmore, and do we need to consider benching him? Because they have some pieces in place to be a really good team to win this division, and it isn't all, it's not all lost at this point, right? Now, I will say Jonathan Taylor is hurt. We'll see if he's able to come back Thursday. I doubt it, but I don't know if it probably won't be a long-term issue. So hopefully they can generate enough offense without him on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, and the comment about offensive line, Matt Pryor and Danny Pinter, I think is his first name. Pryor and Pinter may as well just sit down, cross their legs on the field, or alternate doing so. Matt Pryor specifically, like Quentin Nelson has got to be so annoyed because of the stunts that are coming back inside, and all of a sudden he's got two guys, and Pryor's not rolling with the guy underneath. He's just staying outside where there is nobody. So then Nelson's got two guys that he's got to block, and he'll shed one and move over to the guy who's coming on the inside. But Pryor doesn't come over to. Pryor's not doing. He's not blocking. I don't know what he is doing out there. Pinter has been, I think, our weakest point in the run game, which is bad for a guard to not be good in the run game. So anyway, we've got gaps on the offensive line, and I knew that we were going to be not as good there as we were last year with some of the personnel changes. I didn't think we were going to be this bad because these guys were on the roster. Anyway, yeah, offensive line needs work. Secondary needs work. I'm not as mad at Matt Ryan now because I'm seeing these guys come out of nowhere. I want him to hold the ball with two hands while he's standing in the pocket. But, I mean, he's just getting lit up constantly.
Yeah, and I think really the only thing I have to add is for the fact that the Colts are 26th in the NFL for rushing this year, which is not what you would have expected. And I know you guys mentioned that Jonathan Taylor most recently got injured, but only 3.5 yards a carry for the average as well, which is also 26th in the NFL. So that's probably the most surprising and the eye-popping stat is that the Colts aren't able to run the football. Because I was thinking that with them being able to run the football, that would open up Matt Ryan in the play action because he's very good in play action. That's really his strength is play action. So I was a little surprised so far the first quarter of the season for them to be not as effective in the run game. But with offensive line issues, makes sense. So
people were dumping on us at the beginning of the year for our wide receiving core. They can't keep up. It's going to be the worst one in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. They're the ones that are keeping us in the game because the offensive line can't block in the run game. Like Pittman, Doolin, these guys are at Paris Campbell, thank God, actually had a good game for once. I mean, these guys that, didn't get any credit are the ones who were, they're having to make a play for the ball because Matt Ryan had to get it out early because he doesn't have protection, and they're doing it. So, like, these young guys are keeping us in. I don't think long-term we can sustain a young wide receiving core like that. I am more happy with our wide receivers. They're probably the one thing I'm most happy with on the offense. And I admittedly thought they would be the thing that I would be the least happy with.
So real quick, obviously with the reports from Peter King and the general frustration from Jim Irsay, this is a big game on Thursday. You obviously don't want to fall to 1-3-1. With the division, Tennessee and Jacksonville look like they should be at least 5. There's no 500, but around the 500 mark. Do you think it's warranted? If they miss the playoffs this year, do you think Chris Ballard or Frank Reich should be on the hot seat?
If one of them is going to be on the hot seat, I think it would be Frank.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
I still think that he is not on the hot seat right now as far as the office is concerned. I think they're still diagnosing the problem in Irsay's mind. Irsay, I will say, he does surround himself with people to be able to advise, unlike some other, like Jerry Jones. Like, he just kind of does what he thinks and what he wants, and it's less about what does the group think. So I mean, I think if anyone would be in jeopardy, it would be Frank Reich. In my mind, I truly don't think that Frank Reich is the issue. I still think it's a coordinator issue that we're running into. But I also, if Wright got fired, if Gus Bradley got fired, if Ballard got fired, I feel like we will have let go the right person. I will trust whatever happens with who we let go. The person I would be the most upset about losing would be Chris Ballard. I think he is a genius in the way that he builds teams. I mean, look at the rosters that we've built, the talent that we've had, and it hasn't translated from paper to on the field. I think that in a lot of ways, paper is to be set up by the GM. The field is to be set up by the entire coaching staff. And I think Ballard has done his job. He's gotten the right people there. Question marks around quarterback. That's been like a one position.
That's a big question mark, though. Let's be honest with you.
The one position over time that he has not been a big success at. I think the big thing for him, still having a leash and not having to be on the hot seat yet, would be if Irsay looks at him and says, "You get me Stroud in the draft, and you're fine." You know, something like that, where you get us a talented, potentially long-term quarterback. So anyway, I'd be most upset if we got rid of Ballard, but I trust whoever we release.
That's fair. That's fair. We'll see. We're gonna come back to this game as far as picking it later on. But Jared, we had a good week as far as the Jets come. Trying not to get too excited. You know, Peyton's alluded to it. It's a very good win, but there were some issues there. There are a lot of things to clean up. But Jared, what did you take away from Zach Wilson being back? We're now 2-0 on the road. Another road victory. The Jets are 2-2 through September. Which we'd all sign up for. What did you think about this win against the Steelers?
I feel like this is the main takeaway for me, is that Salah is raw as a coach. I feel like he definitely gets the troops ready to go. They want to play for him. They will go to war for Robert Salah. And I think that Zach he kind of has that same kind of aura to him. I feel like the guys love Zach's ability to lead. We heard that through what he said in the final drive. Let's go score an effing touchdown, right? So, and I love that mindset. I love that brash mindset of like, screw kicking a field goal to tie this game and go to overtime. Let's go down and punch this thing in and score. And he looked phenomenal on that final drive. He looked great. So I like seeing that. Money time, fourth quarter, he looked fantastic. But back to Salah. So I think that at times we look so undisciplined sometimes. It's very frustrating. That the penalty right before the half, that was a huge penalty. Not telling Zach to like say, hey, let's reel it in. Don't turn the ball over right before half. We're on the plus side of the field with less than 2 minutes to go. Let's try to get some points, whether that's 3 points, we're back up by 10, or maybe get lucky and score a touchdown. It was 3rd and 11. He got greedy. He was trying to get a touchdown on that possession. So there's things like we talked about, communication. I think if he can clean that up, if he can clean up the communication piece, the guys already love Salah. They want to play for him. He's got that part down. He hasn't lost the locker room in that aspect. But if the communication part doesn't get better against good teams, that's when you're going to have an issue. And you can lose the locker room that way, because then it almost comes lip service of hearing like, hey, let's go get this game. It felt
like he was getting to that point. It did a couple of weeks ago. It felt like it, where he was just talking out of his, left ear and nobody was really listening. But you knew that the guys were, still on fire for him. But it just kind of felt like, if this continues to get ugly, this guy is just talking some nonsense. And I think no one's really believing him anymore. But no, I think you're right. This was a good turnaround to prove that the guys still believe in him.
Yeah, and just defensively, I feel like we stepped up big time, had 4 turnovers generated, which is not something the Jets do. Now against a not very good Steelers offense, which is weird to say, but their offense has not been good this year. Trubisky hasn't been good. Obviously, Pickett threw 3 interceptions. However, I mean, if you actually watch the game, you know that one of them was a tip ball that Firmite should have caught, and then the other one was a desperation. So, you know, how many interceptions did he really throw that were his fault? But anyway, so defensively, secondary looked a lot better. We were generating some good pressure up front, which is something I know you and I have been waiting for as well. We actually look like a competent defense. And I think we're sitting right around the top 10 for total defense at this point. I think if we can get the point totals down, yardage wise, we're doing well, but we need to do better with allowing points on the board. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I definitely an encouraging win. I do feel like we'll probably talk more about the Jets Dolphins game, so I'll wait for that. But overall, it's exciting. So it was definitely an exciting win to win in Pittsburgh. We've only done that once. So good win for us.
Yeah, Jets never win in Pittsburgh.
Never.
I was going to say, you retired Mitch Trubisky. Well done.
Yeah.
Off to the XFL.
You got a Steelers quarterback benched. When's the last time that happened?
So I will say, you know, it's good to see Zach Wilson out there. Oh man, it is good. I know it was rough in the middle. Great opening drive, and then a great finish. But Peyton, something that you were talking about with the Colts and the faith that you have in Chris Ballard. This has kind of been the takeaway, the overarching takeaway for me this year is I don't know what we have in Salah. We don't know what we have in Zach Wilson yet. You know, some encouraging factors there, but Joe Douglas, man, he knows how to put a roster together. And, you know, like you said, on paper, right, the GM's job is to put the talent on paper and build that roster and with depth. And then it's on the coaches to really apply that, put them in the right situations and get the most out of them. But, man, I would hate to lose Joe Douglas, the way that he's rebuilt the team and and basically the whole roster in the last 3 years. There is talent in every aspect. You know, obviously not a complete or perfect roster in any ways, and it ultimately depends on the quarterback, just like the Colts. You know, what can Matt Ryan give you? What can Zach Wilson ultimately give you? But the talent that is all over in every group, right? In offensive line, which is going through their injuries, but the talent is there when they're healthy. The weapons, you know, this might be the deepest wide receiving core in the NFL. You got 2 very solid running backs, and then you look at the defense and that defensive line. Quinnen Williams. We need to shout Quinnen Williams out because he's playing like a top 5 defensive tackle, and he might be the best defensive tackle in the AFC on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and
he's playing like a monster.
You also have to give AVT some credit. Getting pushed over to left tackle.
Yeah.
And he looked good. I mean, against, you know, Pittsburgh's their defensive line without J.E.T.S is a lot to be desired. But for having to get thrown right into left tackle, he looked great. He looked really good. So, yeah, you have to give credit to him too. He's played phenomenal in the offensive line for us.
So I will say, you know, we're going to pick the game. The typical Jets in the past, this would be a trap game and they would lose, right? You know, you see backup quarterback coming off a team with all this drama. This would definitely be a game that the Jets lose in the past. We'll see what happens. I haven't decided just yet who I'm going to pick, but this would be, you know, coming off of a high and the Jets feeling good. This would be a classic trap game for them where they typically lose, especially at home. And we'll see what happens. But I will say, last thing, Zach Wilson, man, you know, there are a lot of things to clean up there. And really that one bad interception, the other one was a tip ball, and Conklin has to catch that, even if it's not perfect placement. But that the end of the game, right, where you pointed out the leadership and how the guys, you know, how the guys rally around him and the way that he's able to close there, you know, going 10 for 12 in the fourth quarter, and really rallying that team back in this down 10 in the fourth quarter. You know, not many guys in the NFL. I know Steve Young was talking about this. A lot of quarterbacks are talented, but you know, at the end, you know, people like Mahomes and Brady, can they close? You need a closer, right? Like the NBA, you need a closer at the end of the game. And if you don't have a closer, doesn't matter how many points you're up. You need to be able to, crawl back into this game. And he showed that he can at least do that and close a game and rally his team back. So, and I will note, yeah, I said this in the group chat. He really looked like Johnny's, college version of Johnny Manziel. There was only one sack in the game, but there could have been so many more that I 100% can guarantee you Flacco would have been sacked maybe 5 times in this game.
Absolutely.
And Zach Wilson used his legs and moved around. He kind of looked like a hybrid of Johnny Manziel and classic Russell Wilson back in the day of just, I'm running 50 yards just to, behind the line of scrimmage just to get out. And it might just be an incompletion, but we didn't just lose 10 yards, which was pretty fun to see, especially after the knee injury. So, yeah.
I'm interested to see how Teddy Two Gloves does against
Teddy Two Gloves.
We'll talk about that more later on.
The revenge game, the classic. The Jets got him and flipped him for more than they got him for. So
That's
who knows?
right.
Who knows how he has feelings about the Jets? But that guy is loved out there for sure. All right, let's move over to I think probably the most notable game of the week. Quickly, we'll talk about the Baltimore Ravens game against the Buffalo Bills. Sorry, the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills end up coming back in another comeback loss or come from behind team that historically, we saw the Miami game, the historical comeback against the Ravens. Similar facet, not as big, but the Ravens were up very, very large in this game. Bad weather. Josh Allen looked bad in the first half. Lamar looked amazing, and then the script flipped, and Baltimore ended up, going for it on 4th down. Didn't get it, and end up losing this game. What did your main takeaways from this in that 3-point win from Buffalo?
Something's wrong with the AFC North giving up these leads. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest takeaway I have is Baltimore has given away 2 massive leads this year. Now I know, of course, both teams that came back to beat them had some very high-powered offenses, but at the same time, you got to be able to close these games out. So that's my biggest takeaway is Baltimore has kind of shown some vulnerability. And I mean, I feel like the Bengals are in a good spot at this point now. Started the year off a little slow. I feel like they're in a good spot to overtake that division. Baltimore's defense obviously has some major holes in it. I know that the Bills ultimately only wound up scoring 23 points, but even still, it was the manner in which they did it. So, ultimately, that's my biggest takeaway.
The Baltimore defense, God, I feel so bad for Lamar. Like, you can always make the argument, well, why don't you convert a little bit more and then your defense doesn't have to be out there. Okay, well, that was kind of the situation that Peyton Manning had to be in for well over a decade of like, I have to be good so that my defense won't be bad out there. And can Lamar do that consistently? I don't know. I mean, he's kind of in that situation right now where he has to be so good that his defense's badness doesn't ruin it. So, I mean, yeah, they're in a weird spot. The AFC North is very weird, and I agree with you. I think the Bengals have a tremendous opportunity. We get to see that this week, thankfully, to see who's the best man, better man, out of both of those teams. And honestly, I don't know. I kind of hope that the Baltimore defense would start to wake up a little bit. I don't know that they will. I think we might end up seeing another high scoring game with this one, assuming good weather. But yeah, Josh Allen he's phenomenal. Like, it takes a lot to play bad and to be able to flip the switch in your mind to be able to surpass that. Because I know even everyone else on his offense knew, all right, Josh is off today. This is not going to be great. For him to still just make the change and push them to win, and he did it with his feet. You know, it was a lot of a gross game for having to play football. But yeah, Josh Allen is just nuts. I think that end of the year we'll see him as MVP. So my two takeaways are: I feel bad for Lamar because of that defense; they better get it fixed. And Josh Allen's going to be MVP at the end of the year.
I kind of feel bad for Lamar more, not a little bit with the defense, but also the offense. I mean, it's a Greg Roman offense, and we know how those usually start out really hot and then they get figured out. But then you look at this team, and it's really, Ronnie Staley's been hurt, hasn't played in 2 years. And then they never addressed that wide receiver room. They're really banking on Bateman, and he gets hurt and doesn't finish this game. And then it's just Devin Duvernay and J.K. Dobbins limping around, and Mark Andrews sometimes around, but he's got, the case of the drops once in a while. I think I'm a little bit more concerned on the offensive talent where, you even saw it on the 4th down play where I think that play was supposed to be drawn for Bateman. And he's not in there because of the injury, and it's drawn for Devin Duvernay, who is actually open on the play in the end zone, and there must have been some trust issues or something. But Lamar just never pulled the trigger; he didn't throw it to him. They had the touchdown; he's wide open, and he didn't trust him for some reason. Maybe it's just because it's a talent issue or something. But I don't know. The Baltimore Ravens need to address that wide receiver room. And get some more talent other than Mark Andrews, because he hasn't been consistent enough. He's exceptional. He's great, but he does kind of fade in and out and have some drops in key moments. And you look at Buffalo where Josh Allen has to take over too. He has to do a lot for that team. You look at that team on offense, and it really is just kind of him and Stephon Diggs. But at least he has Stephon Diggs, right? You look at that team, it's not as talented on offense as we really originally thought. These really are a bunch of average guys on offense other than Diggs and Allen. But at least he has Diggs and Lamar does not. And I think that's the big factor where Buffalo, and they're more talented on defense. I think that's what's going to make them the better team in the long run, and probably helps Josh push through for the MVP as well. I agree.
Well, and you mentioned the wide receiving core there. I like Duvernay. I like Bateman. Stinks that Bateman ended up getting hurt. I think Bateman's probably the favored one in Lamar's eyes. I don't know if there's trust issues there. From the little bit that I've read about the Ravens, he is really happy with having both of them there because they're both really speedy guys and they're both sure-handed. Now, we got to see that play out long term. Like, they have to show that on the field because it's different in practice than it is in a game. But I think that they've stepped up from the Marquise Brown days at their wide receiving core. I just think they haven't found the rhythm yet.
And maybe it's Greg Roman, right? Maybe it is just Greg Roman, and
it might be.
How to
and
utilize him.
I hope Lamar's a smart guy. I think he gets overlooked for the intelligence, the football IQ that he brings to the table. I hope that he is vocalizing to Roman what he wants, what he needs, trends he's seeing among his own guys of what if we do it this way? This is better for me. This is better for Duve. This is better for Bateman. Like, I hope he's vocalizing that, because I think he's one of the few quarterbacks that sees it the right way to be able to make those adjustments with the offensive coordinator that would take the offense to the next level. But I mean, they got to have a run game outside of him. That, to me, I think is the biggest gap on the offense. And you're right, drops, injuries like that makes it tough with the receiving game. To me, the biggest issue that they have on offense is the fact that if there's a run, it's him.
Yeah, I think, well, this brings up an interesting question to me, which we can just briefly touch on before we go over to our picks. The parity this year in the NFL is pretty wild. And I was thinking, with Buffalo struggling a bit the last few weeks, and Baltimore struggling, and then on the flip side, you got teams like Detroit and Seattle better than we thought, and Atlanta, I think, is 3-1, which is a surprise to everybody. is there a definitive great team in the NFL? And on the flip side, is there a definitive worst team? Like, can we point to a bottom tier team that is just the worst? And I think that might be a little bit easier, but let's take the flip side of, is there a definitive best team in the NFL right now? Because to me, I don't think I can point to one. I think there are a few teams that are really, really good. And I might have said Buffalo early on, but they've looked a little lackluster. I know they pulled this one off in Baltimore, but I don't think I can say there's a definitive favorite or best team right now.
If we're just talking about they've gone out there, they've executed, they've done what they need to do, Eagles. Which, why?
Yeah, but do you trust it? Yeah, execution-wise, sure.
I mean, each week
trust it?
They keep doing it. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that's helping them is Miles Sanders. He's healthy. He's been effective running the ball. Even on an off week, I mean, he's pushing 50 yards. That's not bad. But that's opening up quite a bit to allow this, we'll call it a majestic connection between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. I think they are a dangerous duo. So, I mean, and the defense has they've been solid. They've done what they got to do. They're keeping opponent. They're a bend don't break. I feel like they're not a this wild like Rams defense from a couple of years ago where there's a turnover every other time that they're on the field, or even kind of the Saleh 49ers defenses. They're doing what they need to do, and the times when they've been able to like really hold a team, it's been a bad team. That's I don't know. So yeah. I say definitive best. I mean, right now the Eagles. At the end of the year, is it the Eagles? No, I don't think so. I think it's the Bills.
Jared, before you answer, I think one thing that the reason I didn't say the Eagles, and obviously they are the last undefeated team and thus far have looked the best. But as far as definitive best, I couldn't say them because we just haven't seen it, and I don't have enough trust just yet in Nick Sirianni and the Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has been amazing. He's on my fantasy team. I love it. And I know this is weird to say because of the way that it's turned and looked this year and the end of last year, but it's still, I still wonder, is this the beginning of, does this mirror the beginning of the Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray era where they've started out so hot? Kyler was, in the MVP talks at the beginning, and then they fizzled out at the end of the year, and then we know what it's turned into now. And in hindsight, it's hard to say that now with comparing them to the Eagles. But I'm just thinking in my mind, could this be that version where week 14, week 15, we're like, this was so good, what happened? Jalen Hurts just couldn't make all the throws, and Nick Sirianni kind of fizzled out a bit. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just wondering in my head.
The only rebuttal I'd have to that is I just feel like the Eagles so far have played very good complementary football. They're doing things both effectively offensively and defensively. With Arizona, I feel like it was more so just they had very good offense.
Good point. Good point.
But with that said, I still think the cream of the crop of the NFL right now is Kansas City. I know, of course, that they had that loss to Indianapolis at Indianapolis, so it was a tough loss. But I mean, ultimately, to me, they've definitely looked like they're ready to take off as the best team. I think it's really between them and Buffalo. I mean, you could pick either one. I don't think you're necessarily wrong.
Well, then it's not a definitive. The question is, there a definitive favorite? So if you're saying it's a pick, then maybe not.
But I feel like it's literally between those two teams, and then below that, I'd say after that there's a drop off. But you'd have the Eagles after that for the NFC at this point. With that said, we will get an idea on October 16th as the Chiefs and Bills play each other. So I think that's going to be a huge game. I think that'll give us a much better idea of who the better team is. I'm looking forward to that matchup. So.
All right. On the flip side, or did you want to finish up anything before we go to the bottom tier?
I was just ready to jump into the bottom.
I know
tier.
you're so excited. The bottom tier, which is interesting to me, I have an answer here, and it's a team with 2 wins, but it is an interesting year, right? Where there isn't the definitive 0-16 Lions or Browns, right? We're seeing a lot of flashes from Detroit, and like I said, Atlanta has surprised a lot. Seattle, I mean, Geno Smith has been one of the best quarterbacks numbers wise, which is really cool to see. But a lot of these teams that we thought were tanking are outperforming their expectations thus far. I will say, though, I think it's pretty clear that the Chicago Bears are bottom tier. I think the Chicago Bears are the worst team in the NFL right now, and I think it's pretty clear.
I also feel like a 2-win team is the worst team in the NFL. And it is not the Bears. I would say the Bears have been able to run the ball. They have not been impressive at all in the air. I mean, this week I think which by the way, Thomas, did you take the over on the 148.5 for Fields passing yards?
I did not. No, okay. I did not.
He hit because he had that 70-yard completion early in the game.
I will say here's another stat that Cooper Kupp has more receptions than Justin Fields has completions.
Yep,
which is cool. Yeah.
No, they are the worst passing offense in the game for sure. I think they are not the worst team. I think the worst team is the Cardinals. They have 2 wins, and they haven't even looked impressive in those. Every single thing that they have done has been late in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter. The 2 wins that they have had, let's see, they beat the Raiders, and then they beat the Panthers this past week, right?
Well, why aren't the Panthers the worst team in the NFL? Maybe that'd be Christian's answer, but
you beat the Panthers by 10, okay. You beat the Raiders in overtime by 6. So you're beating the lowest teams by a little bit, and you were talking MVP, you were talking potentially leading the offensive numbers. What are you guys smoking? No. The defense doesn't look good. They can't run the ball, and the passing game is inefficient. All around, they are the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion.
Jared?
There's only one winless team. That's the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are the worst team in the NFL.
Have you watched them?
I have. And looking at their statistics here, they're towards the bottom in both categories, offensively and defensively. They lost to the Bears as well. So if we're going to say that the Bears are the worst team in the NFL and this team lost to that team, then I'd say that you have to say it's Houston Texans. I know that obviously they tied you guys, but let's be honest. The Colts have not looked good so far. Offensively, you guys are scoring the least amount of points in the league, which is crazy. But you guys have only scored 57 total points so far this year. So, and you got 20 of those against them. To me, it's Houston. Houston's the worst team.
Even with the fact that they have been competitively in each game that they've played.
Again, if we're saying that Chicago is the worst team and this team lost to Chicago, yes, I'm saying that.
We are not saying Chicago is the worst team.
Well, Thomas did. So Thomas was one that said that they were the worst team.
Put them up against my Cardinals, and I bet the Texans walk away.
All right, one team nobody has said. One team that nobody has said who has the worst point differential. Can I get any Commanders fans?
I was going to say votes? The Commanders are not good either.
Any votes for Washington?
The one thing I'm going to go with a college mentality here. Their good win. They beat the Jags. How they beat the Jags, I have no idea, because obviously Carson Wentz didn't know how to do that when he was in Indianapolis. Yeah, how they were able to do that, I don't know. But yeah, they've looked terrible too.
All right, this wasn't on the docket, but real quick with no explanation, we have our Heisman draft. I want to do a first coach fired draft. So everybody pick a coach who you think is going to be the first coach fired in the NFL. I will pick Matt Rule. 1-6, I think 17 straight losses, or they were like 1-16 in games under Matt Rule where the opposing team has scored more than 17 points. So as an offensive coach, that's awful. They can't put any points up on the board. It's only the defense that's keeping them afloat right now. So give me Matt Rule, first coach fired.
I'm going to go with the team we just talked about. It's unfortunate because of what he went through a few years ago, but I'm going to say Ron Rivera.
It's a good candidate.
They just have not looked good on any aspect other than week one.
Peyton, there's an obvious answer here for you. If your worst team is Arizona, is that the man you're going to take?
I don't think it's the coach. So I think it's the quarterback.
Which I'm agreeing. I'm seeing a decline in Kyler Murray as well.
Is it? Well, it can't be Mike McCarthy at this point.
See, you took mine, Thomas.
I know. Well, all right. Well, you can, if you really have nobody else, then
because he's already been on the hot seat,
yeah.
and I don't.
And he's lost the locker room.
Yeah, I think if there is, I'll say Lovie Smith, and I only say that because if the Texans have the opportunity to hire a sexy candidate from the college world, I think they will.
That's a good point. Yeah, if there's a choice out there by week 14, college is done and they get the chance. That's a good point.
I'm going to throw out a wild card real quick. And this is just dependent upon how the season goes, but so far
thought of another one.
So far it's been an underachievement. I'm
Bill
going to say
Belichick.
I'm going to say LaFleur. The reason why I say that is because of the type of I feel like Aaron Rodgers has so much power with the Packers. That's the only reason I say that. But again,
he's won 13 games every year he's coached.
Well, that's why. Again, right now they're 2-2, and Aaron Rodgers is getting long in the tooth, and he just signed that long-term deal. So for them to start off 2-2 again, I think if they can turn it around for the season, then they'll be fine, and that he won't. But if we start seeing that they lose a couple games here, I mean, Detroit's actually somewhat competitive in that division, as well as Minnesota. So if both of those teams start to creep up and they're overtaking Green Bay, then that's a call. I think that that'll be a cause for concern, and you could potentially see a big shakeup. I mean, it's a long shot. I'm certainly going to say it's a long shot, but I could see it happening. Is what I'm getting at.
You're right that Rodgers is near the end. He's got his extension, but he's near the end. But he likes LaFleur. So, like, is he really going to roll the dice at the end of the year, at the end of his career, to like get a head coach that maybe he doesn't like buy in? And how much opinion or how much trust does he have for the organization to let him weigh in on a head coaching hire?
Well, and I think it's the flip side too of Aaron Rodgers is leaving. We have a coach that's won us 13 games every year he's been here. Let's keep him for after Aaron Rodgers and see what he can do and then evaluate.
But does Aaron Rodgers say are the 13 wins per season me or is it LaFleur?
Oh, it's both, but
it's
Mike McCarthy's
the lack of personnel, I think. Yeah. But
I agree.
I'm going to change my pick from Lovey.
Okay.
Todd Bowles.
Ooh, that's
not a bad pick either.
Card. I like
that.
That
was bad pick.
His defense looked bad this week.
It did, and defense is his bread and butter. So if he can't even do that on the team, I mean, and Brady, from what I understand, not a huge Todd Bowles fan. He was okay with Arians, didn't really want to see that marriage keep going, but isn't a huge Todd Bowles fan. So, I mean, now that Brady is getting divorced, more than likely, I think he plays an additional year. And he's not going to do that unless he can do it with somebody that he wants, because he's got to be greedy and get that Super Bowl win. So I'm going to say Brady pushes Bowles out.
We'll save our Brady takes for another day. But yeah, interesting day in the tabloids. All right, let's get over our picks. Couple of good games, more than a couple of good games. Maybe Kyle will update us on our records, but I don't have those as of now. So we have a couple of good games. We're going to start with Cincinnati and Baltimore, a AFC North rivalry matchup for the division potentially, right? These are the two teams, Cleveland has been back and forth, but looking at these two teams, Cincinnati coming in off of a big win against Miami, Baltimore coming in off a bad loss to the Bills, as we discussed. Give me Cincinnati. Give me Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Cincinnati's trending up. Baltimore is kind of staying stagnant. I like Cincinnati to get a big win on the road and kind of take control of the division.
I don't like this game because it has so many variables to it. Cincinnati is on the up and up. I think that Burrow's settling in now. The one thing that they've struggled with so far is their run game. Mixon did a little bit better this past week, but I still think that's one of their struggle pieces. Give me Baltimore. I'm going to say that this is one of those games where just Lamar does everything. The Cincinnati defense has shown a lot of holes this year. I want to pick them so bad. But when they have holes and it's in a divisional rivalry game, it typically doesn't turn out well for them. Last year, they showed a lot of solidarity across a lot of their defense. But yeah, I won't even say Baltimore. Give me Lamar to win.
That's fair. No, the one thing that does make me nervous, Jared, is Zach Taylor called just a bad game last week despite the win. He made me so frustrated, the lack of adjustments and lack of ingenuity to get Jamar Chase the ball, and like you said, Peyton, the run game, getting Joe Mixon involved. I don't know. I just Zach Taylor needs to have a good game if they're going to win this, and I don't really have faith in it. But I picked them, so I just think this is going to be a big Jamar Chase game. Although T. Higgins has solidified himself as 1B 100%.
Yeah, and that's my biggest takeaway as to why I feel like they're going to run away with this game potentially, is because of the fact that they're able to get chunk yards in the passing game. But we'll see. If the offensive line holds up for Cincinnati, I feel like Cincinnati should win this game.
All right, we have the last undefeated team here in Philadelphia going on the road to Arizona, who
the worst team in the NFL,
as the worst team. But you know what? Peyton? I might just do it.
Do it.
I might just do it. There's something in me just deep down that says, "Come on, Kyler, one more time."
It's indigestion.
It might be. But Cliff Kingsbury, you handsome devil, you got something up your sleeve. They're gonna play spoiler. I don't know why. I just think they're one of those teams that just when you least expect it, they pull it out of their sleeve, and it won't look pretty. Give me Arizona at home. I think there are no longer any undefeated teams.
It feels like that should happen. But I feel like the Eagles have just looked too good so far, especially against mediocre to lower talent. I feel like they take care of business. I think it's going to be business as usual for them. They'll stay consistent, and I think they'll ultimately wind up winning by 7+.
Arizona, worst team in the NFL. I pick them to win in week 7 when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Until then, They're going to lose, and they're going to lose to Philly. I think they lose by 2 scores at least.
Yeah, I know. I'm probably going to look kind of foolish here. It's a long shot, and I don't feel good about it, but you never know. I don't know. I just feel like there might be a little spoiler action there. And
sometimes you got $5 and you just want to put it on the underdog.
You got to do it once in a while. That's it. Let's go over to our third game. Kyle's not here. He's also not a Cowboys fan in my book any longer. So, but we are going to pick not Kyle's Cowboys, and they are going on the road to the Rams, who we saw struggled mightily, and they always do against San Francisco, but this time a little differently. They're at home against the Cowboys. We are most likely not going to see the return of Dak just yet. There were reports he was targeting to come back this game. Cooper Rush has been undefeated, obviously 3-0 since Dak has been gone and looked pretty good. But it looks like Dak might need one more week, and I think that might be the deciding factor. Give me the Rams at home.
I've really liked how Cooper Rush has looked. He's been poised, and he's just, I don't know, he's made plays when they've needed him. Additionally, Cowboys defense has looked very good this year, something that I think a big reason why I was hoping the Jets would potentially get Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator, because the dude is a fantastic defensive coordinator. So I like the Cowboys to win this game. I think they're going to give Matt Stafford fits. They have one of the best pass rushing attacks in the league. So I feel like they'll get to Matt Stafford. Give me the Cowboys in this one.
I feel like the Rams are underwhelming this year. It's taking too long for them to get certain, like the Allen Robinson thing they were talking on the broadcast last night of got to let the play calling settle in. McVay's not used to Robinson yet and which plays to call for him to get open. I'm like, you got to get used to that. Like, you got to start executing at some point. And especially on an offense where you have 1,000 weapons. Give me the Cowboys. The defense has looked good. The Rams have been underwhelming offensively. Stafford has 0 time. And with, like Jared said, the pass rush the Cowboys are bringing in, I just feel more capable or feel more confident that the Cowboys are capable of picking up the pass rush more so than the Rams are going to pick up the pass rush.
Interesting. All right. No faith in the defending Super Bowl champions other than myself. I will gladly stay on that bus one more week. I know they haven't looked great, but I think I don't know if Cooper Rush has enough on the road to get this done. All right, moving on to game 4. Jared, we got to do it. We got to pick this game. We have to pick Teddy Two Gloves in Miami coming into MetLife Stadium and facing the 2-2 Jets. Peyton, can you take this off? Can you lead this off, because I need more time to actually decide who I want.
That's fine. You can listen to my reasoning and then make your decision. So Jets are coming off a hot week. It's a bad Steelers team. Doesn't matter. Even a bad team in the NFL is still a bunch of professionals out there. But it was gritty. You had Zach Wilson back. I think there's a lot of hype that's in your locker room right now that's going to roll into week 2. Miami, you have a cloud hanging over that entire organization right now with all the stuff with Tua. Ironically, I think that Teddy is a good quarterback to be in that spot right now with that cloud, because he himself has had to deal with a lot of heartbreak. So I think he's one of the better people that could be in the position to be with the guys that he is right now. But I mean, you got to give an edge to the home team, and the Jets, I think, have that hype. J.E.T.S.
Oh my goodness!
Give me Miami to beat the Jets at home. Teddy Two Gloves comes in.
You know what though, Peyton? You gave some good points. Like seriously, those were good points. Just regarding Teddy Bridgewater and the adversity that he's had to come through. He is like almost a perfect person to get them through that. So I agree with you there. I will say this. I feel like, man, Jet fans they've been dying for I don't know how many years since Fitzpatrick was there, 2015.
2015, but even then he let us down in week 17.
Exactly. But we were relevant then. So, 10-6, had a good year. The stadium, Zach Wilson's first game back and to be his first home game of the season. That stadium's going to be nuts. And that's a big reason why I feel like the crowd is going to help this team in the sense that they're going to give them additional energy. We're already going to be just jacked on energy because we have a bunch of young guys. So I like us to get this upset only because of what you mentioned with Tua being out. I mean, and Peyton and you and I have talked. We know that Teddy Bridgewater is capable. He's a good quarterback. One of the best backups in the league. And he's honestly almost a carbon copy to an extent of Tua. He doesn't have like a super strong arm, but he's very accurate, and I think he probably makes better decisions than Tua does. So, I just feel like our defensive line is going to be the story. If they can get the same kind of pressure that they got on Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, that they will have a good opportunity to win this game. I like us with the upset. I think it's going to be very close, but I think that we come away with this win. I say that with some optimism and honestly with a little bit of confidence, but this could be the turning of the page for us. And this is going to be a huge game for Jets history, I think.
I can see like the conflict on Thomas's face right now because he's thinking,
"Oh,
my picks,
gotta go. I got my picks and my team. I started off 1-4 week 1. I gotta climb back. These picks matter. I will pick the Jets, but Jared, there is no confidence. There is no confidence. But I will give you a few points where a couple of notes I took from that game, the Dolphins game last week with Cincinnati. It is proven that you can now throw on the Dolphins, right? Byron Jones is out. Xavier Howard, they picked on him single coverage. They were double teaming Jamar Chase and put Xavier Howard on Higgins, and Higgins burnt him time after time. And they exploited that. And that's not something that the Dolphins are used to, but maybe it's a blueprint to show you that you can burn him one-on-one. And, you have to be accurate, though, because he leads the NFL in interceptions the last 5 years or so. I do think the offensive line for Miami is going to be an issue. And I just, like you said, that home field advantage, I don't know, Zach showed me something that I think if he can put that together again, now for 4 quarters, they have the advantage there. The one thing I am worried about is that nerd over there in Mike McDaniel making Salah look silly. I think he's going to come out with some weird schemes, the trick plays, the whole kit and caboodle, and he's just going to make Salah look like a big old jock over there and put him in a blender. And I'm a little nervous about that brainiac, who I don't really like.
You sound like you want to switch your pick.
No, I do, but I'm not.
Talk yourself into it, Thomas.
Yeah, no, I like it. The Jets. All right. Well, Peyton, now we got to pick your team.
Well, I want to make one more point about the Jets here. I think it is winnable for you guys. I think if you are going to win, if I look at the stat line for Garrett Wilson, if you win, the stat line for Garrett Wilson should say over 100 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns.
Him or Elijah Moore, because I think Elijah Moore is due for a breakout game as well.
I am not sold on Elijah Moore.
Okay.
I think Garrett Wilson has quickly pushed his way of I can be the guy, and I will be. Just give me the ball. Elijah Moore is still just kind of the Jamison Crowder safety valve late in his career type player in my mind. But no, if y'all win, that is the stat line that I will look to see. If I see anything else, I will not be convinced that you guys win.
No Brees Hall, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, breakout game that doesn't get it done?
Not expecting it.
Okay. No, that's fair. And not necessarily. He played very well, but not expecting that either. All right. We go to Thursday night. Peyton, do you want to take the lead on this one, or do you want us to buy you a little bit of time here?
I'll take the lead.
All right, let's take the lead. Colts are on the road in Denver on Thursday night, and they are the underdog, and there are some uncertainties, obviously, with Shaq Leonard out, and then now Jonathan Taylor hasn't practiced the last 2 days with the ankle injury. What do you say about this game?
I don't think that Jonathan Taylor plays. I think it's smart for us to keep him out. Shaq Leonard, no go, but I mean, we've played almost all except for 1.5 quarters without him already. So, I mean, I already gave my comments about Bobby Okereke earlier, and I think from that aspect, we'll be okay. Give me the Colts to win on the road. I think that we are harder to prepare for now that you don't have to think about the potential of what Jonathan Taylor could do. And now you're like, oh, wait, but they do have 3 tight ends who can all ball out if needed. So that's a weird offense to try to prepare for. So I think give me the Colts. We're going to see a lot of, or we should see a lot of quick plays getting the ball out soon, because the Broncos defense will jump on us. Now they've got their own injury bug that's going around, but I still think we're going to have to try and get the ball out real quick. The Broncos offense, just when you think they have the perfect matchup, they just don't complete the ball. They don't run it. You don't have Javonte Williams now. So I think the best player for them on offense this next week, it's probably going to end up being Judy, with Melvin Gordon coming in behind him. I think the Colts are going to spread it around receiving wise. It's going to be a close and not fun game to watch, but I think the Colts win.
Yeah, probably another Thursday night under, which has been pretty lucrative thus far. Not just because you're here, but I actually do believe the Colts win this. I know they're at, plus 150 or whatever. I'd lean probably towards taking that. I think the injuries with Denver are more significant. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball without Javonte now. Melvin Gordon has fumbled it 5 times in his last 44 carries, and he's inventing new ways to fumble. So I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. Russ has been banged up, and there were question marks on if he was going to play, and he's practicing, but I think the pass game's broken, obviously. And Randy Gregory now is out on IR. So I think that was a big issue too now on defense, where secondary is very good and strong, but I think you're going to be able to run on them. And even without JT, Nyheim Hines, maybe it's Phillip Lindsay, maybe it's Jackson, whoever gets the ball there. I actually do like the Colts here to pick up the win.
If Randy Gregory didn't get hurt, I would have picked the Broncos.
It's a big loss.
I think he's that big of a swing, especially because that was coming on our weakest side of the line. So now throw a tight end over there, and that can at least shore up Pryor.
I'm going to go Colts 16-13. I'll even throw out a score for you.
I was going to say 17-10 is what I was kind of expecting.
I mean, those Denver games have been pretty low scoring. They won the San Francisco game 11-10 in prime time, and yeah, no, this one probably, now that we all said these low scoring games, it's probably going to be a 28 to 26 game, but you never know. All right, I don't know if you guys have anything picked. Those are our picks. We will leave a spot here now for our comrades. If they have any NFL picks, insert here.
Now for my NFL picks, we got Cincinnati at Baltimore. Give me the Bengals continuing to mesh together, fix that offensive line. Give me the Bengals in a close one over Baltimore. Philly at Arizona. Arizona has those new black jerseys. Really interesting, really entertaining. I trust this Philadelphia team a lot more. They're going to lose at some point. I don't think this is the week for it. Give me the Eagles. Cowboys at Rams. Cooper Rush, good quarterback. I do think this is a nice bounce back spot for the Rams, and I think the Cowboys do come down just a little bit. So give me the Rams in that one. Miami at the Jets. Miami is -3.5, and they have Teddy Covers as their quarterback. He, against the spread in his career, is 67% and 80% against the spread on the road. Miami's favored, and Teddy is going to cover. Give me Miami.
All right, NFL picks for Week 5. Bengals taking on the Ravens. Give me the Ravens here. I think last week the Ravens actually should have won their game. It was a little bit of a bad coaching decision there by John Harbaugh to send out the kicker. Probably should have gone for it on 4th and 1. The Bengals just, I still think they're a good team. They're definitely struggling still a little bit, even with winning last week. Give me the Ravens. Cardinals and Eagles. Listen, I'll never want to see the Eagles win, and there's no way the Eagles can start out 5-0. There's just no way. Give me the Cards. Cowboys and Rams. Listen, I have had lots of harsh things to say about the Cowboys this year, but man, they've been winning on a winning streak and not looking flashy doing it, but have been winning the games by playing just solid across the board and not making mistakes. Rams, man, have not looked very good. I think this is going to be a defensive game, but give me the Cowboys. I think they're going to be able to put more pressure on Stafford. Dolphins taking on the Jets without Tua. I don't have a whole lot to go on with the Dolphins, and I think the Jets are starting to kind of click together and get things figured out. So give me the Jets, and then Colts taking on the Broncos. So this game actually has already happened. I'm recording these picks because I wasn't feeling well through Thursday yesterday. So I already know what happens in this game, but I would have picked the Colts to win this game. I would have picked the Colts to win comfortably. It was pretty darn close. So I'll let you guys decide. Does my pick count because I didn't get to do it before then? I'm telling you, I would have picked Colts, but we'll let you guys be the judge on that. Thanks all.
And we appreciate it. Those picks were terrible. Ours are a lot better. But thank you at least for contributing for something. We appreciate it. I don't know if you guys have anything lined up.
Oh, hang on.
Yes.
We got a comment on. Yeah, of course, Kyle takes the Cowboys when they actually have like a.
Yeah. Cooper Rush. He probably has a Cooper Rush jersey, and he's already thrown out his Dak one. I don't know if you guys have anything lined up for just general overall picks. We always end the show with our best pick. Betting pick for NFL and college. And I know, Jared, you have something lined up. I do as well. So Peyton, we'll give you some time here, but Jared, go ahead and take it off on your best bet for the week.
So I'll just put them together. We'll go with college first. I have Auburn here at Georgia. What we talked about with Georgia's offense not looking the best up to this point. I like Auburn to cover. Georgia's a 29.5-point favorite. I don't think Georgia's 30 points better than Auburn. I certainly think Auburn will be within 30 points. So I feel like Auburn is an easy one there for this week for college. And then for the NFL, we have the Packers and the Giants. Somehow the Packers are an 8.5-point favorite. The Packers
in London, by the way.
Yes, and the Packers haven't looked all that phenomenal up to this point either, especially offensively. They've looked okay, but played against a Mac Jones-less Patriots team last week and had to win in overtime. So I can only imagine the Giants being within 8.5 points. I like the Giants to cover that as well.
Even with their own quarterback issues, right? We don't know who's starting this game, so you're still confident in that one.
Saquon Barkley is what makes them tick anyways. So Yes, I am confident in that.
Sure. All right. Fair point. I like it. He's on the underdogs this week. I will go over to college, and this is a must every year, right? Oklahoma, Texas. You take the over. That is a must. I'm gonna do it. It's high. It's 65.5, but I think it's a fun play. I think you have to do it every year. I think yours is back, and this Texas team has the potential to put up 40 plus. And I know their defense is strong, but and Dylan Gabriel hasn't looked great, but if they can contribute their 25 to 30 points potentially, I think Texas can get the rest there. Over to the NFL, this is the lock. I love it. It's a teaser. I'm gonna, this is as they say on Twitter, the 10-unit whale lock of the year. Max put 100 flames, put everything on here. Teaser, I'm going to take Tampa Bay with the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota's -7. I'm going to tease that to -1, so they just need to win by 1 point against the Bears. And obviously, like I said, I think the Bears are the worst team. I don't think they'll be able to score enough with Minnesota, especially non-prime time Minnesota. Kirk Cousins, they're going to put up points. And then Tampa Bay is -9 on the Falcons. Get that down to -3. So just win by a field goal. A revenge game, as far as Tom Brady's going to be on fire. He's going to want to win. And the Falcons are, I think are frauds at this point. Mariota looked bad. They hit 7 completions. Cordell Patterson is now on IR and hurt. They can't find a way to get Kyle Pitts the ball. Arthur Smith is kind of wonky. So just win by field goal. Give me a teaser there, Minnesota and Tampa.
Who's your NFL pick, Jared?
NFL was Packers and Giants, and I picked the Giants to cover.
College, because I'm just now looking at this. College, Arkansas plays Mississippi State on the road. Mississippi State are 8.5-point favorites. I like Arkansas to cover. I would take the money line to have Arkansas win. It's like plus 245, because I feel like there's this big assumption that Arkansas is now a bad team. I completely disagree with that. I think they're still a great team with a great coach and a great quarterback. But I'm going to say Arkansas to cover. And then for NFL, Lions and Patriots, to me, I feel like that is not going to be a fun game to watch. Somehow the Lions are not favored in that game either. They are plus 140. Give me the Lions outright.
And I would agree with that.
They're due. Yeah, they're due. And what is it, Billy Zappi again? Right? I don't know. Yeah, there you go. I like it. Well, there you have it. We just won you some money, so you're welcome. Those are some good picks. And we don't have to worry about the, filtering through Kyle and Christian and Mike and their picks. And, this is the 3 best right here. We showed up. We did our research. We give you locks.
I didn't do research, but
no.
Reason.
You did 10 seconds of research, so it's reason.
The money that we just won you should invest that into us and sponsor us.
That's what I was going to say. My picks were so easy that you should definitely go for them. And yes, use that money to throw at us.
I like it. Well, there it is. We appreciate you listening. Another edition of the Illegal Contact Podcast. We'll see if the others join us next week. But really appreciate you listening in wherever, on YouTube and on Spotify. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, tell us that we look funny, tell us we look great. Anything, if you like our dogs barking in the background, tell us to unmute ourselves more, because I know Jared and I both struggled with that today, but really appreciate you listening in. We'll see you next week.